in the morning light. New York, Boston, Philadelphia, LA, I still see your face. Buses roll, the distance grows, but I remember you're just a dream away. Working my way, coming back to you. Working my way, coming back. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between, I'll see you in the morning light.
Frankly, folks, I think I look better as an avatar anyway. Alright, look, it is what it is. Got audio today, so I'm just going to put up some graphics. Robert will join us shortly anyway. So, alright, this is what it's all about right here. Okay? So, if Glenn Youngkin wins tomorrow, it will be because he made an effective use of the education argument against Terry McAuliffe, who wanted to talk about pandemic response, again, pandemic response, Medicaid expansion, and believe it or not, Donald Trump. And the voters of Virginia just didn't care about that. Maybe they did at one point, maybe a couple of months ago, it would have mattered. But it doesn't matter in the final home stretch going into this election. All right, it's What Are the Odds with Barnes and Baris. Barnes will join us shortly. I'm one half of that, Rich Baris, the People's Pundit. All right, so we did this. This is the final locals poll. It is important to go back and kind of kick back to the one we did for creative destruction, which was tied up at 47. All right, which we'll probably do in a little bit. But the overall big picture here, and I'll check and see if I missed anything before I came on the air. But overall big picture, we have Matt from Insider Advantage come out, exclusive for Fox, which he's been doing for a while now. He's got Youngkin by 2. A couple others were tied over the weekend. That leaves Terry McAuliffe with the biggest lead he's got in recent polls with about a point. The betting markets now have tilted Youngkin. Early voting really does show a toss-up. All right, now we have, I just missed it a couple hours ago. We do have the final, thank you for that, by the way. What's his name? I think it was Duke. Youngkin with a slight lead over McAuliffe, 2.3%, 49.4%. to 47.1, very close to what we got. 1.9% third party write-in, 1.6% undecided, and he says which could grow by capturing late deciders. That is key. All right. If you look at this, what we found here in the latest that we put up, that female group, yes, one or more school-age children under the age of 18 in the state of Virginia, maybe not in Iowa or Ohio or even, Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, Florida, definitely not. But if you go to a state like Virginia, New Hampshire, okay, Illinois, this is because of the demographics and because of the economics of the state. That's a demographic that typically could give Republicans a boost, but in those particular states are good Democratic voters. They are why Ralph Northam won by 8.5 points. They are why Joe Biden won by 10 points in November over Donald Trump. And I know we can all talk about shenanigans here, shenanigans there, but folks, he won the state by 10 points. All right, and we are going to talk about shenanigans because I'm going to bring up a clip from Rumble somebody dug up for me. But the bottom line is I really don't think at the end of the day that would overcome if Republicans simply do all they have to do, which is vote. And independents going out and being crucial will be crucial to Youngkin, although they tend to tell us they are going to vote the most on election day. All right, but the bottom line is here, and you got that? You do, right? Didn't I send you that clip, that Rumble clip? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go back and look and see if I can dig it up from when we were texting it back and forth. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. All right, I just want to load it up and keep it ready for the queue here. Yeah, I got it. All right, so the bottom line is very similar leads in the final days of this. That group right there is key. The men, maybe, we'll see 1.1% of those people were undecided. That 3.8 you see in the female category, all right? What McAuliffe does have going for him is that 10.8 all the way at the end of the column. No, all right? Youngkin is carrying men who don't have children, 53-46, but they're, again, less than 2% undecided. Females who do not have children, a very Democratic leaning group, they have a good deal to go as they decide. But look at the very first column. Yes, all 18 are over. Virginia is very generational when you look at party. If the more, second, third generation you are, the more conservative you are, the more Republican you are. All right, so that is typically a Republican voting group anyway, and those women are going for Youngkin 50-46. If that 7% breaks a little bit, it could grow more. The 4% in the yes, one or more school-aged under 18, if that breaks a little bit, that will go probably to Youngkin, considering who they are and their ages. Bottom line is that 10.8 that McAuliffe's got at the final column, it would be a wash at this point. It would be a wash. That's why 49.5%, and now what do the other people have, Matt? Wow, that's almost, Trafalgar's almost identical, 49.4. I saw the Insider Advantage was really same thing. Echelon, same thing. Everyone's generally finding the same thing, which is that McAuliffe cannot afford for Youngkin's undecided voters to decide and then vote. McAuliffe at this point needs, and I say this pretty confidently, he needs a lopsided electorate. And the only way I think I can see that happening is if a lot of independents don't come out. But we are going to show you here in a little bit that, the same thing Robert and I told everybody going into the race in 2020. We asked people, who are you going to vote for and when are you going to vote? Are you going to vote in person early? Are you going to vote absentee, vote over the mail? Are you going to vote on election day? And the bottom line is, we see the same patterns we saw last time, which is Democrats will get, obviously, the lion's share, but that these people say they are going to vote, folks. Even in that category, you're certain to vote or you've already voted. McAuliffe, if you combine those, it's really, really close. Youngkin actually leads it by 2 because you're combining the certain to vote. Terry McAuliffe needs people who are uncertain to vote, and he needs a bigger lead in the vote by mail than what we see right now. Because 2 things are happening. One, his vote by mail lead is not as big as Joe Biden's. The demographics aren't there to support that. That's number one. Number two, I think that Youngkin is going to get a bigger, or at least percentage-wise, it looks like he will, get a bigger turnout than even Donald Trump did. I'm not saying in total numbers. I'm saying as a share of the electorate, because Youngkin's getting almost all of Trump voters. He is. And then there's definitely, it depends on, what poll you're looking at or what day. We found around 12%. 12% of Biden voters say they will vote for Glenn Youngkin. Less than 2% of Trump voters say they will vote for Terry McAuliffe. That's a big swing. And that's probably, there's overlap there with those independents. Again, 57-38, these people went for Joe Biden. 57-38. And now they're going for Youngkin. As a matter of fact, I can bring that up here. It is right there. Yep. No, that's by parental. All right. Now, 57-30. And actually, this is a little bit lagging, because if you guys checked out the updated numbers that we did, let's see. Let's get it. I'll give you exactly how much it is. You'll see those when those undecideds did lean, they did go to Youngkin. So, all right, let me bring it up. Give a little click. When they lean, this is the graphics we did for the show on Friday. And then we said, well, some little trick. We're deciding whether or not to update them. When they leaned, it actually widened Youngkin's lead with independents and others to 53.6 to 36.2. McAuliffe actually fell because I don't have to explain basic statistics to you guys, right? It comes in, he can actually push 39 down to 36 pretty easily when the lion's share of 10% go to one person. All right. So that's what's going on here. Again, I see a lot of crazy commentary over the weekend. Folks, the electorate in 2020 was D+2, roughly. D+2. It was not an immense electorate advantage, turnout advantage for Democrats. Ralph Northam, again, depending on what you look at, he had a D+6 to D+8 electorate. He lost independents to Ed Gillespie, but he only lost them by a marginal amount. They say 3, I say 3 as well within the sampling era, and that could easily have been a wash. Crossover did not go to Ed Gillespie in any significant amount, so Northam comfortably carried the race in 2017. There's something different happening here. And what people I heard over the weekend are trying to suggest is that somehow Terry McAuliffe is going to get a bigger Democratic turnout than Ralph Northam did in a year where the turnout was pro-Democrat. You know what? Robert's here now, and I'll bring him in to ask us, just to put this in historical context. All right. Let me bring in Robert here. Hey, Robert, can you hear me, buddy?
I can.
I'm an avatar today because I think my cam link overheated, buddy. I think that's what happened. But in any event, let me see if I can bring this up and what they're trying to say, man, and put this in some historical context for people. What they're trying to say is that if McAuliffe's got maybe even or a 1-point lead in some of these, the only two, let's be honest, who is it? It's the Washington Post and it's Suffolk, which was even a week before. They're giving McAuliffe a bigger turnout advantage than Biden. Nearly half of the turnout advantage Northam had in a pro-Democratic year, instead of on par with 2020 or worse or more Republican. The early voting demographics, they don't make sense to me with some of these leads in these early voting polls. What do you think about it, man?
So, the Target Smart data has the early vote way down from 2020, has it being much more Democratic than it was even in 2020. But has it being way down from 2020. So normally there's about a 1/3 drop off from presidential election to off year gubernatorial election in Virginia. At least the early vote, the Target Smart data early vote, which comes from the state in terms of total number of voters. Target Smart, because Virginia doesn't have traditional party registration,
Right.
He projects. The Target Smart folks project where they think the party affiliation likely is of the voters. And it has a more than 2-to-1 Democratic edge amongst early voters. But the early voters are only a little more than 1 million, which they're almost 3 million in 2020. So you look at those dynamics, and so I was looking at it, and it's actually kind of consistent with the New Jersey data. In New Jersey, Biden won by almost 20. In Virginia, Biden won by 11. In both states, in polling, they're running about 10 points behind Biden. The Democratic gubernatorial choice is running about 10 points behind. Now, in New Jersey, that gives them a nice, 8-point cushion. So that even if turnout goes wacky, Democrats are about a 95% chance that they will win in New Jersey, and that's where the betting markets have it. So I don't have a pick on that. On this one, on the show, I think about a month ago or so, and as well as on Bourbon with Barnes at vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
Good stuff.
I said that to take Youngkin a couple of weeks ago when you were out early with the polling data, because he was at 3-1 to 4-1 in the betting markets. Now he's a favorite, slight favorite, but I think a deserved slight favorite.
Yeah.
You're right about the polling. Almost all the polls in the last 3 weeks, the Fox polls show Youngkin up. All the others show it basically a dead heat. Tie, 1 point one way, 1 point the other way. So it looks like what you have is a slight lean towards Youngkin, and that you're right. It comes down to turnout, and then the good. Here's really where the turnout battle, I think, is going to be interesting. Demographically, Democrats lose certain voters in turnout and gain in other voters in the Trump era. They lose African Americans who don't tend to turn out as much as they do in presidential elections. They lose young voters, millennial voters, who don't tend to turn out in gubernatorial off-year elections like they do in presidential elections. On the flip side, Trump, the Republican, loses your blue-collar Trump voter. A lot of them don't turn out in these off-year elections. So the question is, who is the bigger turnout miss? I think in Virginia, you just don't have a huge blue-collar Republican vote anymore. I mean, because of I was looking at the demographics. Over half the vote comes from just the urban suburban centers that trended heavily towards Biden. So if for Youngkin to win, Youngkin needs to hold the Trump blue-collar vote, get a slightly favorable turnout trend, and just make inroads into urban and suburban voter groups based on issues like education. And it looks like
you brought that up.
Yeah, your polling, it looks like, shows that's exactly what's happening. I would now say a slight lean towards Youngkin, but I still have to see it to believe it, just because there's so many darn government workers in the state of Virginia now.
Yeah. And I want to bring look, I don't even have to give that much commentary to this. It speaks for itself. Okay. But I'm glad you said that, because Loudoun County is in District 10. Okay. And yeah, this is the early vote, just so people can say, I know you're trying to lean in and see it. Already voted by absentee ballot or early voting, 52 McAuliffe, 39 Youngkin. Plan to vote before Election Day, either by absentee or early voting. That's where McAuliffe really builds up his strength, 61-37. And then plan to vote on Election Day is 63-34 Youngkin. All right, so, and as you can see, where are those undecided votes there? I think that's generally Youngkin's, what should be Youngkin's concern, which is that if he falls slightly short on Election Day, it'll be this group that Robert was just talking about. They're still out in the Shenandoah Valley. There are some outside, there are even some still in Nova, small. All right. It's really when you get outside, in the Shenandoah Valley, and when you get, which they'll call the mountain in the exit polls. All right. And then Hampton Roads, Robert, there's some people that wait on the elites, and seriously. And Trump brought those people out, like waitresses, and stuff like that. It really did. And if Youngkin, this is the thing, when we're talking to these people, they say they're voting. They're going to vote for Glenn Youngkin. But that's not even enough. And you know that, Robert. In the state of Virginia, it's not enough. You need to make inroads in Loudoun County. You cannot get killed in Loudoun County and Fairfax County. You just can't do it. And what we found, forget about by county, we went by congressional district. The 10th district went Democratic by 12 points in November 2020. What we're seeing in this state is across the board, Democrats have lost anywhere between, guess what, 10 and 12 points, maybe upwards of 14 in some areas. So I'm looking at the 10th congressional district and almost had a heart attack when we first saw it. All right. Oh, I thought I put it in here and saved it. Let me throw it in here real quick and you guys will see what I'm talking about. All right. Column, demographic. You guys get to see this in real time. It's pretty cool. All right. So I'm going to drag it down beyond early votes.
There's a certain jury selection trial people that should have been using this data.
No kidding. And we could go over
we'll
that.
Get to that.
Let's go. Yeah. All right. So let me look by district. Look at Biden's approval in Abigail Spanberger's district. It's under 40%. It's abysmal. Yep. And 52% strongly disapprove of Biden in Abigail's district. 7.5% somewhat disapprove. But here's Jennifer Wexton. All right. His approval in Jennifer Wexton's district is now in the low to mid 40s, basically the same statewide. 55.8% disapprove. Yeah. And these are all oversampled, folks. So when it says 93, rest assured, because these are the areas where everybody wants to talk to you. You know, you're just talking to them as you're trying to reach the rest of the Shenandoah Valley. I was just referencing, but eventually you have to weight it and make sure it's representative. All right, look at just the gubernatorial vote preference with leaners, and you can see the 10th district in Wexton's area. Robert was that's Loudoun County. That was McAuliffe by 10. Just last, a little over a week and a half ago, about maybe roughly, when we polled for Creative Destruction Media. That was McAuliffe by 10. And now it's basically dead even. What it means is that Youngkin really could be fighting Loudoun County to a draw. And the closest a Republican got in Loudoun County last time was Cuccinelli. And I think he lost it by about 4.5 points. All right, but he still came up short because he didn't get enough turnout in some of the other more Republican districts. And just look at Youngkin's just killing it. Look at the first district, 73.4%. I mean, it's just crazy. Crazy amount. Bob Good's district is getting more Democratic. Republicans may have a problem there if he retires at some point. But 7 out of 10 Youngkin's taking in the 6th district. This is a walloping. And by the way, Abigail Spanberger, 54-44, that district. Again, about a 12-point swing in that district since Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Spanberger won by 2.5%, something like that. So here, Youngkin's taking the 7th by 10 points now. And again, that was closer about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. What happened is these people just started deciding, and these independents just went gangbusters towards Youngkin, Robert. I mean, it's that simple.
The two things that really hurt McAuliffe
was... Yeah.
I have stories on McAuliffe someday about his involvement in certain corruption schemes. I represented someone that had direct knowledge of it back in the day.
Nice.
I think, what do you think about Youngkin running away from Trump? I mean, he doesn't criticize him, but he's been very, I guess their numbers, did you poll Trump at all in this poll?
We didn't poll Trump at all, which is, kind of interesting. I know we thought about it. And I really was using generally the same template from the first poll we did. And I was thinking of adding that when we did the follow-up with locals, right? And I didn't do it because I said, we're running low on time in the field. Let's be smart with what we're going to ask. I didn't, Robert, but I got to tell you, I mean, if you look at Biden's approval and the 2020 vote preference, I mean, it's really astonishing how consistent it is across the board. If you voted for Donald Trump, then you absolutely cannot stand Joe Biden. I mean, I'm talking about small single-digit approval. If you voted for Joe Biden, then there's double-digit disapproval. So it's almost like maybe some of that media heat and attention coming off of Trump makes it less about Trump and more about like the performance in office.
I mean, if Youngkin loses, I think it'll be because he mishandled Trump. That, like, you look at McAuliffe.
Well, he needs those people. McAuliffe
is not running away at all from Biden. Obviously he's tried to make Trump an issue. And I'm sure when they first started polling, Trump was probably underwater in Virginia by double digits.
Yeah.
I just don't know if that's still the case, nor do I think that actually worked. Running against Trump, I didn't think would help McAuliffe in the ways that I think. I mean, the big problem potential problem for Youngkin is blue-collar Trump voters. Do they vote or not? Because if they stay home, then McAuliffe will probably eke this out. And the best way to get those blue-collar people to vote is to make Trump an issue or to saddle up with him. And apparently the event today that Trump is doing, like from outside by video, apparently Youngkin's campaign asked that Trump not come to Virginia. And Youngkin won't be anywhere at that, where he's sort of telemarketing in almost, or, where he's coming in by video. He won't be at that rally. And so it's like, I don't know if, I get the idea of I'm not, trying to run like the Maryland governor that's popular, to appeal
Larry Hogan. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I get it. The idea is appeal to the same DC suburbanites who are uncomfortable with Democratic agenda items on taxes and education, to get them that, the Romney voter, to get the Romney Clinton voter, the Romney Biden voter to come back. That is to keep your distance from Trump. I think that's their internal strategy. I just think it's risky because the risk is you lose that blue collar enthusiasm you need for a vote group that generally does not vote in off-year elections. So, I mean, I remember when we were looking back at the data for 2018, you could explain the entire election's outcome based on the number of blue collar Trump voters who did not vote in 2018.
I didn't. Yep.
I mean, that was like the margin in several Senate races, the margin in a bunch of House races. So it's a big gamble to say to keep their distance from Trump. I guarantee you, if Youngkin does lose, Trump's going to let everybody know that's why.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, without a doubt. It does look like he ticked a little bit higher in the DC suburbs. Look, Ken Cuccinelli was in the low 40s in the DC suburbs, because it is about turnout, like we said. If you can have your disproportionate edge, come out in Loudoun County and less come out in Fairfax, then that's how you get that DC margin. But this is his strategy, Robert. Look, here's the region right here. If he loses, it's because that mountain region turns out to be like 18% of the vote instead of 20. You know what I mean? Or 17, because he didn't do it.
21% or so?
In which one?
The mountain?
In the mountain? Yeah, it's 65-31. So, I mean,
up 34, but you have that being over 20%. If that dips to
it's
17%,
20. It's about 20. Yeah, it's about 20%. 20%. Let me look here. I can get the PDF actually, and we can take a look at the very last sheet. I want to say it's 20, like on the dot, maybe. Nothing's ever on the dot with me.
Right.
So it's always decimal points.
Right. So I think if the mountain vote was down to like 17 and the DC suburbs replaced it, that would flip it to McAuliffe.
It would. Absolutely. But again,
that's why I think the election. I mean, like I said, I lean Youngkin because I think Loudoun County's school problem dominating the downstretch of the campaign is going to help Youngkin. And McAuliffe trying to make it all about Trump, I thought was a mistake. I mean,
nobody cares.
Tell you about the Democrats that they can't run on what the past Democratic governor did, or McAuliffe run on what he did.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He is a sitting former governor, and there is nothing else you'd like to talk about. I mean, it's just crazy. Yeah, right there, row 30. It is mountain region is 20.5%, so about 20 to 21%.
So
the DC suburbs about 30.
If you reweighted that to 17% mountain and 32% DC suburbs, my guess is that's enough to flip, just enough for McAuliffe to win.
Yeah, you want to see? I mean, I could do it behind the scenes and then show the difference when we get there. You want me to do it? Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. Okay, all right. I mean, give me
how elections really break down.
All right, and give me cover for me for a second while I get the variable changed. But what are we gonna do? We're gonna do 23 DC suburbs and 17 mountain. Is that what you said?
33 DC suburbs, or there are 32 and a half. Yeah, thereabouts. 33 DC suburbs, 17 mountain.
17 mountain. Okay.
For folks that don't know, you got the DC burbs. The reason why Virginia's been changing is two things. The DC burbs is the main reason, but the secondary reason has been the urban areas around Richmond and the urban areas around Virginia Beach. Basically, anywhere there's government workers have been trending heavily Democratic.
Yeah.
I mean, Virginia was a state that went 4 to 5 points more Democratic than in 2020 than it was in 2016, despite the fact that the mountain region trended towards Trump. And it was because of the rule vote. And many of the African-American areas in the South Central region of the state, Hampton Roads, part of Richmond South Side, parts of Central Virginia, they also trended towards Trump. The problem was, Richmond itself, Alexandria, those areas, even Virginia Beach, digging the suburbs, double-digit movement towards Biden. So the problem is those government workers, they always vote. They understand where their paychecks come from. So
here's something interesting, buddy. Okay, it's actually what it did do, because that's why it's always tens of percentage points. Because when I say I want to weight something one way, it's going to automatically know whether or not we spoke to enough people here. So it went to, and this is exactly right on it went to 32.8 DC suburbs, 17.2 mountain, and ironically, it didn't change a whole heck of a lot. You know why? Because the race didn't. It took a point off of Youngkin's lead. It would have to be bigger turnout among. Right now, there's a problem Democrats are having. They're having less black turnout.
Yeah.
It would have to be younger and less white, basically, to knock the other 2 points off. And we could do that. It would have to be like 64%
I don't think
white.
that will happen. So so if it holds up that the blue collar vote, even if it drops off in the rural areas and the suburban vote stays strong, then if Youngkin would still win under those circumstances, then I think Youngkin is the right favorite. And
I just saw people. It was a great question somebody asked. You know what it is? It's because we just played an experiment and we weighed by region. This is a good opportunity to explain the difference. Region as exit poll show. All right. You know what would have made a bigger impact if we weighted by the 11th congressional district or something like that, because that is different racially. Right now, the DC suburbs are also including the 10th and Loudoun still has a very white constituency. And right now, these people are pissed, right? So it would have to be weighting by district where we move specific areas. Look, there's leaning Democrat to obviously, not light blue. And then there's deep, 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 deep blue in the DC suburbs.
Yeah, that's what I say. It's probably within a county. Like the people forget Loudoun County is up on the West Virginia, Maryland border. And so I went through it when I was on Tim Pool a week ago Friday. I went through Loudoun County because you have to cross the West Virginia border into Maryland. And the thing is, there's parts of Loudoun County that are rural. But if that like blue collar part of Loudoun doesn't turn out, but the upscale suburban DC suburb part turns out, then that's how that could keep weighting in McAuliffe's direction. But the other thing isn't it Fairfax County that says they may not have their votes in until Friday?
Yeah, and now, thank you, Robert. Thank you, because now this would be a good time to play this. Okay, let's see if I can. Yeah, I should be able to get the audio in here. Somebody hat tip the Washington Pundit, I guess, on my locals too. Somebody grabbed it and found it, because this has been buried. It is very difficult to find. But what was, you know what? Let's just play it and then we'll talk about it. Okay. Here we go. Thank you, the Washington Pundit. Any way to make
my old buddy Bob Beckel.
Yeah. Exactly. Is this the way? I don't even know Rumble that well. Is this how to do it? Yeah. All right. Here we go. All right. So everybody can see. Let's go back. This is 2014 Bob Beckel on election night in 2014 when Mark Warner, the incumbent, still a senator, was challenged by Ed Gillespie, same Ed Gillespie who would later run 3 years later against Ralph Northam and get creamed in a pro-Democratic year. All right. And Bob Beckel is sitting here looking at the returns from Virginia come in, and what's her name? Dana Perino is having like a canary. Like, I told everybody it was going to be a sleeper, right? And she's all proud of herself and she thinks Ed's going to win. But the rest of us who know elections are sitting here like, sorry, Ed, you came up a little too short, because that's why Fairfax is not giving up their numbers, because they are figuring out how many they need and to come up with to overcome Ed Gillespie's margin. All right. And people like Dana, I mean, I don't know what the right word is, Robert. Ignorant. I don't know what the right word is, but Beckel eating too many oxys that night just gave her a reality check. All right, so this is I'll probably get
Beckel loved to drink. I mean, I like Beckel. He was an old school
Me
labor
too, man.
Democrat, with a
Me
populist
too.
kind of instinct. But man, he had to. The reason why he was at Fox was because he had certain in sports we would call them off-field issues.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He wasn't. He didn't survive on Fox shortly after this. All right.
Probably
so
not.
he did. Nah. Yeah.
He was just being too honest. He used to be on PBS
He's
all the
too
time.
damn honest.
Yep.
Too damn honest.
No, that's how you steal shit, Bob.
Yeah. Here we go. Check it out, because it was like what we found out in Wisconsin and everything else. I'll walk the line here, but it's the good old fashioned way, folks. Nothing high tech about it. All right. Hold on.
This race is going to come down, with all due respect to my dear colleague on the 5. I just do not believe Gillespie's going to hang on and win in Virginia. Fairfax County still got 40% of the vote out, and I used to work that county, and we always held back votes, and it'll come in.
You held them back? How'd you do that?
Well, it was pretty easy to do, but
It's pretty easy to do.
I love old Bob Beckel.
Believe it or not,
Look at
this
Fox.
will
Like, you're not
come down
supposed to
to
tell
Kansas,
everybody that,
this whole
Bob.
thing.
You're not supposed to drink before you come on, Bob. Only take one drink. Don't go full Rudy Giuliani on us. Oh, it's pretty darn easy to do. I mean, I love
like pretty darn easy.
That was like the guy who introduced me to how voting worked in Grundy County, Tennessee, when I was a kid. I was like, "How do you guys get the exact numbers from certain precincts?" And he said, "Well, we just made sure the machine counted it the right way. It was an old school machine. It's like no matter which way you put your ballot, it always marked it the Democratic way by certain numbers." That's when he taught me. It's not who votes that counts; it's who counts the votes that count. But that's just Beckel being honest, and you can tell by his tone he's a little toasted, and he's just like, "Oh yeah, we already got the votes back in Fairfax. We'll count them when we need to count them, and then that's pretty darn easy to do. I used to do it all the time." And you could see, Fox like, "You're supposed to tell that on TV."
Oh yeah, how you gonna do that? It's pretty darn easy, he says in response. And I'll tell you what, guys.
Gillespie was an old school establishment Republican, so that's why they all love him with Fox.
Oh yeah, and that's what. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'll tell you, he admitted things. If you listen to it, and I'll put the link in the chat room, even though I know it's going to get me in trouble. But if you listen to it closely, what he is saying, folks, what he's saying, he said, "I used to work that county." Okay. Bob Beckel is a Democratic operative who never held a civil service job in his life. So what he is admitting to is that he is saying, folks, the election officials in Fairfax County helped him work it to make sure that they got the numbers they got. And he said, "We're holding it back." They knew with 60% reported, Robert, that they were in trouble. And then they put the brake on. And you know what? Since he's a Virginia guy, how does old Larry explain that? Right? Mr. Larry, who said, there's no shenanigans. Nothing happened in Wisconsin, even though the sheriff's about to arrest people out there. Nothing happened over there. Nothing happened here. Nothing happened there. This is your state. How in the hell do you explain what he's saying? First of all, they're full of crap when they tell people this stuff, Robert. He is different. Maybe there are others who are young, inexperienced, have never really been on the ground or witnessed these political machines, right, and how they work, and especially in places like Fairfax and elsewhere. So I'll give at least some leeway to the cubicle nerds who think they're data gurus and pretend like nothing happened. I'll give them some leeway, but he's not one of them. And he's been around Virginia. He's been around politics a long time. How does Mr. Sabato explain this? What is Bob talking about? Larry? What's he talking about? I mean, come on, Robert. Give me a damn break. He's on Twitter every day. Big lie, big lie. The big lie is that you're pretending this crap doesn't go on. That's the big lie, Larry.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, they're still trying to use the big lie language, and Trump's already flipped the script on that one, saying the big lie is that the election was clean, that it wasn't fortified in the way that it was. So yeah, I mean, Beckel, I respect Beckel. I knew him back from my when I was interning at the AFL-CIO as a kid in the 90s. And he was that's what old Democratic polls used to be. They used to be honest. I mean, they would when they stole, they would tell you about it. Or as Big Jim Folsom used to say, "I may have stole, but I stole for you." That kind of style. But I mean, these days you have
those
these
guys.
pompous, pretentious pricks like Larry Sabato pretending that everything's done above board, and it's just a coincidence that counties like Fairfax magically hold back their ballots until they need to. But I guess they're already previewing they're going to be holding them back until Friday, apparently now.
Incredible. And well, look, he hired Terry McAuliffe, the campaign. They hired Mark Elias. This is a man, you're a lawyer, you can explain this best to everybody about the sanctioning and what happened. But is it or is it not true that Mark Elias's main job and how he has made his money, Robert, is by trying to overturn elections and basically trying to get votes counted that are otherwise illegal? And,
That's his whole, and covering up Democratic Party corruption. I mean, he is likely, if Durham was doing an honest investigation, Mark Elias would be indicted because Elias was in the middle of all of that. All of Russiagate, Spygate, all that money laundering, information laundering was all done through Mark Elias's firm. Through Mark Elias, who's now at his own office, who's now his own firm. Probably at his own firm because Perkins and Co. started getting nervous about all these criminal subpoenas being issued.
Right.
And so that's who he is. Yeah, so that's his job. And the Democrats are just better at it. I mean, they have hitmen ready to go on their legal team. George W. Bush had a good hit team back in the day legally. But Trump did not. Trump had lawyers who were out to betray him. I suspect Youngkin will be decent, but not great in terms of his legal team. Terry McAuliffe beat deep part of the Clinton machine going way back. And the real question is how much can they hold the suburban vote that, that sort of didn't like Trump's personality and approach more than anything. And has seen the debacle that has been Biden. The Democrats are shocked that Virginia's even in play. You're talking about a state, I think it voted for 11 points for Biden, didn't it?
Yeah, a little over 10.
Ended up.
Yeah, 54-44, basically.
10
it's a big deal.
10 points on the nose. So, I mean, so you look at that. I mean, I was looking at Leap's Atlas, and I was looking at for the past. It's amazing how in the Trump era, it's been pretty close. McAuliffe won by 2.5 in 2013, right after the second term of Obama.
That's right.
That, by the way, was a sign the state was trending Democratic because when you have that kind of dynamic, I mean, you have a narrowly elected Democratic president, and yet they came back through. So your final number is Youngkin. Well, basically Youngkin within the margin of error.
Yeah, about there, and it was growing. I think I don't know how much more room it had to grow because Terry McAuliffe had, a bit of a buffer there, and then there were, if it was a tighter likely voter screen, it's Youngkin all the way. I mean, that's it. But we were being generous because one, it's Fairfax. All right, we're that somewhat likely, which is 30 to 50% likely to vote with the vote history to back up the possibility that they could turn up, or someone could write it in because they've been doing that with that record for a while. But nevertheless, right, we were a little bit more generous, a less tighter likely voter screen than maybe sometimes we would usually do. Now, if they didn't have a vote history and they said they were certain to vote, we weren't very generous with them. If McAuliffe gets that voter that is like greater than 30% likely, but less than 50% likely to show up to an election like this, then he can eke it out. If it's swinging the margin, it's 3 points, so 3 points roughly.
He really needs young and black, millennial, and minority voters. That's not a good. That's
no, he does, Robert. He does, because Robert, I didn't include it, but I showed the crosstab before. In the graphic we have up here, you can see Youngkin with around a 13-point lead among independents. By the time those people were leaning by Friday night, after all our shows were done, it was 15.2. I mean, so it just, every time people, leaned and got in, that lead kept growing. And that was a daily thing last week. So what did it start out with? 10, about 9.5 points. And then it ticked up to 10, and 10.2, then 10.6. It was a nightly event that this thing just kept trickling higher. And I said, I said to, everybody else, this is the start of a surge. This is the start of, that's what a surge looks like. And sometimes a poll can't catch that, Twitter, I think, just booted me. It looks like it. Yeah, I'm getting alerted that basically Twitter has stopped my video. But basically, yeah, that is the start of a surge, and I was worried that we wouldn't be able to catch the whole thing, which is why I said, you know what, let's keep going for a little bit. But McAuliffe does have that buffer. So if those voters, like we just were talking about, he needs them to come out. I could see a scenario where the Fox poll is actually somewhere in the ballpark, like 5, 6, something like that.
Right.
But it would really be, I mean, come on, Robert, that would really
It would be and that would be a massive one-sided turnout is what would happen on election.
Really? Seriously. Yeah.
Which
Even
is
bigger than 65,
demographically unlikely to occur in Virginia, but not impossible because Democrats do rely on a lot of millennial voters and minority voters, often both minority millennial voters, that just don't tend to turn out in these off-year elections. And McAuliffe was never – he wasn't like he was Wilder or anyone else who had strong appeal in those groups.
Yeah, and where Youngkin has some more opportunity is in, I see right here in Robert's, in Trafalgar's poll, third-party write-in is 2%, right? With us as well, some people who originally said they were third-party write-in did change their mind over the course of a week, and basically were initially saying, well, I'm leaning this way. In the end, they didn't. In the end, they picked Youngkin. Maybe they thought they were throwing their vote away. Among that group of voters, and I'll get the exact number so I don't even give it, so I don't speculate. Yeah. The exact number among those voters, the percentage of Biden's approval is 32%. So if those people don't vote third party and they vote for, say, I don't want to throw my vote away, they're not going to vote for McAuliffe. I mean, that's just that. It's, in fact, we can take a look. What's he winning third party voters by? Youngkin is slaying McAuliffe among the third party vote. It is 64 to 20. I mean, and that's with a 7% lean that we gave McAuliffe. He really was only getting 13. No joke. 13. That's it. I mean, those are brutal.
Now, what do you think about the state house? The state house.
And I just wanted to show people. Let me get Robert's poll off and show you the generic ballot. So the generic ballot to me is not, obviously it's not the House of Delegates, but it is a general preference on where voters are.
I'll just going to say briefly on Trafalgar's poll on New Jersey. I don't think it will be that close. I think Democrats will win by at least 8.
Yeah, I mean, what was the 7 to 11 turnout model on Monmouth? I actually thought that was pretty much... Look, if Monmouth's not in the ballpark there, between 7 and 11, then Virginia is a blowout, and this is a really bad night for Democrats.
I mean, New Jersey almost went for 20 points for Biden. So
yeah, it's one of the only states that voted...
is a big, big warning sign.
It's one of the only states that voted higher for Barack Obama in 2012 against Mitt Romney. The other one was Hawaii, guys. The other one was Hawaii. So New Jersey's a tough state. There is a formula. Chris Christie showed there is a formula, without a doubt. But yeah, what does it mean for the House of Delegates, though? We did the generic ballot for 2022. I can't believe there's no relevance there. Echelon Insights did ask about the House of Delegates and the generic ballot, and they were very close. So basically, I gotta say,
and how
if it's 47-43
like there? Now, does it normally correspond to the generic ballot?
You know what?
I thought it leaned Republican.
It does lean Republican, but it leans Republican or favors them. At the same time, it's been moving Democratic, which leaves a handful, and when I say a handful, I mean a handful of seats that are actually really up for grabs. It's kind of like the state house, or what are we looking at? 2 districts that are even remotely possible to flip. Not in the House of Delegates. There's more than that, but Manassas could go.
Yeah, in the House of Delegates, I think Predict It has it almost dead even whether Republicans take it or not.
Yeah, I think that there is a good chance, is my point. I really do. Because if voters right now are thinking, 7th isn't even... I was talking to another pollster friend. He said a couple of weeks ago, we started talking about it. He said, 7 looks pink to me, And just like a couple of days ago, it's not pink anymore. I mean, Abigail's gone. At this point, Abigail is done. If the Republicans put forward a reasonable candidate, she's finished. So if that area of the state, that district's obviously larger, but it does tell you, some of these areas that Democrats probably won for the state House of Delegates that they should never have really won. Maybe it's just that was trending. We're going to find out how much of that was really a true Democratic trend and how much was an off year where Republicans just were not doing well in the state of Virginia.
Richmond and Virginia Beach are two areas
Richmond
that should not be as strongly Democratic as they are right now.
Yeah, I actually am going to pull that up right there. Look, Republicans in Richmond South Side actually have a lead right now in the generic ballot. Wow. So, that's a big deal. And again, the movement. I can't stress this enough, man. The movement in the last 2 weeks was like... it was incredible. It was just, I don't even know the word for it. It was significant. It was moving and moving fast. I think, and then it correlated with the percentage of people who were telling us, you know what, I actually did hear about that report. I actually did hear about this. The change of the narrative in the perfect time. You get to close out a campaign. You got to make your closing arguments. If you lose control of that narrative at the final week, 2 weeks of a campaign, and it's already a relatively competitive race, you're in deep trouble. Find me, okay, guys, I would argue, just, here's a little test for our viewers out there. Find me a race like this, where the challenger started closing strong and was surging, and the incumbent party was able to stop that surge. Find me one. You got an example, Robert? Seriously, I've racked my brain all weekend.
In the inimitable words of Donald Trump's interview with Don Lemon, the Loudoun County story came down to who's doing all the raping, Don.
Oh! And Youngkin played that one masterfully. He did. Because that's an issue. And here, you know what? Let me get the other ones here. We did this nationally.
It worked a lot better than the fake tiki torch try to pretend Charlottesville is back storyline that the Democrats try to pull.
And that's why. This is how the voters of Virginia really feel about these issues. Everybody wants to be woke. All these, Board of Educations, they want to, they want to see progressive.
In the words of Dave Chappelle, gender is real.
Gender is real. And it's the gender and the critical race, and on both sides, Democrats are out in left field on this, man. Some of these were worse than our national numbers, by the way, Robert. Remember when we did this nationally, some of these?
Yes.
And then that was because they are having a local issue right now. Critical race theory was very badly underwater. Children should be taught to be merit-based, took more than 2/3, whereas children should be taught that the only way to overcome racism is to acknowledge U.S. society, laws, and institutions are inherently racist, and some are disadvantaged no matter what they do. That took 2 in 10. That's it.
So my guess is they're losing the people that are your defense industry workers, people like that. Are trending back Republican after the Trump era.
Yeah, that's a really good. That's actually a really good analysis. Let me show
a lot of them in Virginia.
Yeah, let me show you because that's a really good point. I was looking at military versus veteran. The military vote in Virginia damn near split evenly between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, and it really never shot back Republican the way it used to be in the Bush era. And there was definitely something here that happened. Yeah, this is a lot of undecided someone else. Military is breaking to Republicans on generic ballot, veterans going 27 points, and the no is about even. Going to the gubernatorial race, watch this. 59% of military are backing Youngkin. Only 31% are backing McAuliffe. 58% of veterans are backing Youngkin. Only 34.6 or 35% are backing McAuliffe. And then Youngkin is only down by less than 2 points among people who are not military and are military. It's a big change. Even with Trump and Clinton, by the way.
And Virginia
wasn't that big.
Is the centerpiece of the defense industry. And some of this may be some Afghanistan components and the rest. It's just people are realizing mean tweets are not so bad.
Yeah, in the end, man, what's worse? Competency or mean tweets? That NBC News poll
mean tweets
is devastating.
Or 13 soldiers dead.
Or 13 people dead and crying mothers, right? Hysterical crying. Based on something really, it was not an inevitability.
Well, you're trying to expel 20% of the seals and bill them over tens of millions of dollars because they don't want
Right.
to take a drug that they don't need.
Right. I always like to show this too, by the way. It's just me kind of like giving a wink wink. All right. Married, 58, 39, Youngkin. Widowed, 54, 44, McAuliffe. Separated, 72, McAuliffe, 24, Youngkin. Divorced, 52, McAuliffe, 43, Youngkin. Single, 61, McAuliffe, 33, Youngkin. I don't know. Look, you guys draw your own conclusions. All right. And I'm just saying, it does seem like the most angry people. You know what I mean? I don't know how else to say. Some unhappy, angry people. You know, I know not everybody who was separated is, but look, I'm a numbers guy and I deal in generalities. So, like, you know, people, I hate that expression. Don't generalize. The hell are you talking about? It's my job to generalize. That's exactly what I'm supposed to do. And I generally think that there's a big difference between people who are separated and divorced over people who are married. And besides, too, it also matters when it comes down to some of these different neighborhoods, right? So where are these votes going to be moving in a place like Loudoun County? Are they likely to be moving in more rural areas? Or are they likely to be moving in more, you know, metro burby areas where we don't know, but it's a hint. Well, we do. We have an idea, but you never really know it. Yeah, and education, income, lot tighter than you would have thought. White working class, I actually can show that, I believe, but white working class was about 65-35 Youngkin. So, I mean, it was big, big difference, which I think the Washington Post poll had it even higher. It was like 72 or something like that. That sounds like kind of a lot to me, but I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe I'm wrong.
They probably oversampled the rural areas. The rural areas should be that way. I mean, they should be 50, 60 points for Youngkin because I think it got over that in some play parts for Trump.
Yeah, maybe.
In the part of Virginia that wishes they would have joined West Virginia.
That wish they're not even part of Virginia anymore. Somebody is telling us that McAuliffe has canceled an event. If McAuliffe has canceled an event today, that is a very bad sign. If that's
no
true,
doubt. That's always a bad sign.
Yeah, if that's true and he's canceling events, then he has shifted his strategy to Mark Elias counting votes that aren't eligible to count. I mean, that's why we're hearing from them that, you know, maybe the morning after. And now we're all the way to Thursday or Friday. So this is like, come on, guys. Give me a freaking break. But
he needs it to be within a point or so. And the other problem they're going to have is they don't have enough mail-in ballots to play around with.
Yeah, Go ahead. Finish up. I'm sorry.
I mean, they have 1.1 million. Appears to be the final mail-in ballot count, thereabouts. It was almost 3 million in 2020. And with 3 million mail-in ballots, you know, an extra $100,000 here and there ain't a big problem. When it's 1.1 million, you're talking about 10% you're trying to tag in there. That's much tougher. It's hard work cheating an election. Hard work.
And Virginia doesn't have it's not like California. It doesn't have universal unsolicited. So it's going to be different.
Fairfax and the Alexandria area are the only reliable Democratic areas, and the Alexandria areas fancy themselves proper. So Fairfax is the only county they could ever rely upon to pad the ballots.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's not like I don't even think they're nearly the same vote share size as the beloved county in Florida you're always fond of counting late.
And now they have been basically stopped too, though, Robert. That county has been at least if they know it's good for them, they have stopped.
By the way, is Virginia not going to do redistricting until after these elections?
Yeah, I'm sure there are already plans, but there's no way they're going to get it through. How could they do it? How could they? Right. Oops, I ran a little bit too quick. I wanted to show this, though, before we move on. And then we can get in, if you want, we can get into some, jury selection stuff.
Yep.
But this is what we found in Virginia, which I think, because you're a history buff, too. I don't remember Republicans having leads on issues like this, like I'm about to show. I don't remember them having them this early. Going back even to 2014, they had a good election. 2010, obviously, they had a great election. But it never happens this early. And there's always this, nagging, lagging generic ballot lead of 2 to 4 points that basically evaporates at the end of the summer, leading into after Labor Day and the election in the fall. And that's when things rapidly move and people start to really see it in the poll numbers what's going on. I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch this Meet the Press thing, but Chuck Todd comes out yesterday. He's like, "Happy Halloween. I got some really scary news for the Democrats." And Biden's approval is only 40. It's at 42%. It's not great, but it's not, abysmal in like Nixon territory. It's the numbers, guys, that just, listen to Chuck Todd and we'll circle. Oh, I know you hate that circle back thing. We'll come back to
Sunday morning. Happy Halloween. We have a brand new NBC News poll out this morning that's filled with some scary news for the Democrats. The overarching message: Americans have lost their confidence in President Biden and their optimism for the country. At least they have right now. Just 22% of adults say we're headed in the right direction. A shocking 71% say we're on the wrong track. And that includes a near majority of Democrats who are saying that. President Biden's approval rating stands at a dismal 42% versus 54% who disapprove. Believe it or not, just 2 months ago, Mr. Biden was in positive territory, 49% approving, 48% disapproving. So what's pulling down the president's numbers? Well, look at this set of numbers. Just 37% say he has the ability right now to handle a crisis versus nearly a majority who say he does not.
He struggles with.
And also,
go ahead. Hold on. I'll pause it.
Ineffective.
I'll pause it. Go ahead. Give that. You guys.
He's not able to handle, going to the restroom. At least, so I was going to handle a crisis.
And Robert, I mean, how bad is this? For historically speaking, for we've seen presidents with their approval numbers fall, but he's about to follow up right now. Competent and effective, 3750. This is very mimicking.
Well, especially for a
Quinnipiac.
Democrat, this is a record.
Yeah.
I think this will be a record level drop. Obama didn't drop this bad, bad ever. And Clinton only dipped into that range in late 94. Carter actually stayed in the 40s, I think, almost all the way through. I mean, the closest comparison to Biden is Carter, but it's even a bigger disaster than Carter. And it's because of the same issues. Carter snuck in under unusual circumstances with an impossible to keep together coalition. And Biden choosing to go and celebrate wokeism and mandates was a massive, massive mistake. Because he could have at least held the Democratic suburban vote. The woke vote doesn't matter. I mean, it's not a swing vote. It's not a big vote. And Twitter, as Dave Chappelle says, Twitter isn't real. And that's who he satisfied rather than his actual Democratic base. And I mean, and this is before the floor falls in, and that's about to happen economically and otherwise. So this is just horrendous numbers.
They think, and there's no history of this. They think, and I was on this show the other day, and I'm sandwiched between a Republican strategist and a Democratic strategist, and they're both, with their pom-poms. And the Democrat is going on and on about how all we have to do is pass our agenda, infrastructure, and this. And I'm just sitting there shaking my head. First of all, even if that stuff was popular, and it's not the way that they're doing and going about it, even if it was, there's no evidence that signature or legislative achievements help the party in power when those issues are not central to people's concerns. We saw it with Obamacare. We saw it with tax reform, Robert.
Absolutely. I mean, so you can go all the way back. Clinton passed a lot of his signature budget in 93. It led to a disaster in 94. The W didn't have legislative success. He had a terrorism event happen that he responded to that helped him in 02, but he had no signature legislative action go through, and he actually benefited from the fact that it did not go through. Then you had Obamacare passed. He got wiped out in 2010. And as you know, Trump pushed tax reform through and got hammered in 2018. Killed. So the idea that the other problem is the legislative proposals that they push generally don't translate to immediate benefit anyway. So, I mean, if infrastructure put a bunch of people to work and really improved roads and bridges and everything overnight, sure. But his infrastructure plan is a 10-year plan. So most of it's a Democrat. Ask LBJ how the Great Society turned out, right? I mean, he passed everything in 65, and they got hammered in 66. One of the biggest.
FDR. FDR, Robert. Everybody always pretends like the New Deal was such a wild political success. People hated it. There was a blowback. Conservatives were thrilled. This is just there's nothing to support these cheerleads. Nothing.
No, and because now if they were smart, they would be focusing on minimum wage increases. They would be focusing on some real basic healthcare expansion, nothing too crazy, but something that goes to some hot button issue. Find a couple of bread and butter issues and just hit those. Don't do the vaccine mandate nonsense. Don't do these mask mandate nonsense. Don't do any wokesterism. Keep it buried in some low agency level. Try to push back against it publicly. If you're going to pull out from Afghanistan, do so in a way that's not a disaster. All of those things. And then, ideally you don't have a dementia candidate as your president too. So,
the thing too is McAuliffe, I think without wokeism, he may have been able to stay, like you just said, stick to maybe an expansion, a modest expansion. They tried that, but because they just can't help themselves. They cannot help themselves with just going a little too far. And they feel like, you know what, we're probably going to get killed anyway. So we're just going to try to ram fast as we can.
Yeah.
But that helped them get off message.
It's been the Democratic curse really since 1934. So or at least since 38 or thereabouts. Because in 34, FDR got blowback both ways. The left unhappy you hadn't made enough, or the populist left really, that he hadn't made enough economic progress, and the right that he had gone too far. But Truman got hammered in 1946 because people were tired of the expansive state dominant role of the New Deal. But it didn't stop him from going forward in 1949. That led to the disaster in 1950 and 1952. Then John Kennedy was smart. John Kennedy didn't push through anything radical and did just fine in 1962.
Yeah.
But LBJ did. LBJ gave them all the candy they wanted for Halloween. And that led to the disaster in 1966. Jimmy Carter tried to keep a coalition together that was unmanageable and got, of course, wiped out by 1980. Reagan took some chances and was willing to lose some votes in 82 in order to get votes in 84. But that was a planned out structure. It was a 4-year plan rather than a 2-year plan.
That was a strategy. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That was his whole strategy.
Carter went too far. LBJ went too far. Clinton went too far. Obama went too far. So there's been no example of a Democratic president knowing how to restrain themselves. Clinton in his second term did so, but that's it. That's the only, and he had to because he had a Republican Congress. So, there's no evidence of a Democrat with a Democratic House being able to restrain themselves since John Kennedy. So I think it's not a surprise, but it's also reinforced that you don't have like the Bob Beckles of the world would have said, hold on a second, focus on this.
Yeah, they would have said, what are you doing?
Yeah. Let's not put men in girls' bathrooms. Let's not do that. Let's not teach every 5-year-old to hate themselves because their skin color is white. Yeah. Let's not do these. These are not going to sell well. But those guys are no longer heard in the Democratic Party. They only hear the Chuck Todds of the world, and the Chuck Todds of the world are now like, oh man, it turns out everybody hates these ideas.
And that's the thing. You know what? I looked at the NBC, and I'll play the rest of the video after this. I just want to make the point. I looked at the NBC News poll, and the bottom line, the problem Democrats have, they have marginal leads on marginal issues. And on the big issues that people care about most right now, that are the top voting issues for them, Republicans are just killing them. Watch some of these numbers, Robert. Look at this.
As president, 50% disagree with that description. What's more, Republicans, believe it or not, have double-digit leads in dealing with border security, inflation, crime, national security, the economy, and shockingly, on getting things done.
Shockingly? What
Democrats hold generally smaller double-digit leads on dealing with climate change, the coronavirus, education, and abortion.
And what the hell does shockingly mean, Robert? Right off the bat. What is a real impartial comment?
Yeah, Republicans don't get things done. I mean, it's fascinating that Chuck Todd can't withstand his bias, but that advantage on the economy, I believe, is the biggest one in the history of the NBC poll. So
that's huge.
Yeah, gigantic. Nobody cares really about climate change. Outside of
that's
a tiny
the thing.
Group. And increasingly, the only people that care about the coronavirus are those that are still obsessed with it. You know, the ordinary
right.
person wants to get past all this insanity. I mean, that's where your poll showed the vaccine mandate wasn't popular. This was another massive gamble by them that totally backfired. They thought the vaccine mandate would be popular because they failed to properly define the terms in ways that people were actually going to react to it. Not only was the intensity gap all on the opposed to the vaccine mandate, but also when you asked it in terms of people losing jobs, losing access to education, losing access to healthcare, losing access to travel, people were overwhelmingly opposed to using a vaccine as the condition of access to those things. And to employment, education, and the rest. And they didn't know that because they failed to poll on it correctly. And that's why he's getting doubly hammered. I mean, he's just nose diving. And this doesn't even get into the supply chain issues that are just about to get really a lot worse with the vaccine mandate coming through. American Airlines is pretending it's the weather too. It's the vaccine mandate. That's why flights are getting canceled all over the place. I think 2,000 flights now have been canceled after the Southwest debacle. Southwest only solved that problem by saying we won't discipline anybody for not taking the vaccine. They're having to back off the deadline for federal contractors. The Biden administration putting out new guidance that basically is, well, you know, that deadline wasn't really a deadline, that routine. And you can kind of handle it how you want because now they're being sued by all the attorney generals of all the different states, also by Governor DeSantis in Florida, and by a bunch of private individuals. So they're just getting blowback after blowback. And remember, their whole excuse for this vaccine mandate was it'll make employment smoother and stable. That's not happening, of course. We have a supply shortage right now, supply chain crisis, and it's gonna double or triple overnight because we're gonna lay off close to 10% of truckers and port workers and warehouse employees and train workers. And anybody with any connection to the government, including essential services. A third of the fire departments in New York shut down. A third of the fire departments in Chicago shut down. A third of the fire departments in Seattle shut down. So, I mean, they better not have any fires this week. I mean, it's just one disaster after the next, after the next, after the next. And this doesn't even get to the police problems they're having in New York and Chicago because of the vaccine mandate. And they're about to have in LA and San Diego and San Francisco as well. I mean, with already a crime explosion over the last year due to the combination of BLM-style policies and the rest. You see no better evidence of that than the expectation is that the defund the police proposal in Minneapolis tomorrow is expected to fail abysmally. I mean, and that's an extremely liberal city. So these are it's like the late 1960s. They proposed a bunch of stuff that even their own base doesn't like.
Yeah, I gotta, before we move on to the thing, somebody wanted to know, people ask me all the time, right? It's just not my thing, I'll put out the polling numbers, you guys, and I put out the information I put out with it. And if you want, I just not good at, or I'm not comfortable maybe, telling people, well, this is what I say I'm predicted. I just come up with the numbers and you have to figure it out. Although I was happy, Laura was supposed to give me that user's name, apparently won $500 off of because our poll came out and showed Youngkin with momentum. So he popped in real quick and he was like, now's the chance because everyone's going to follow Rich. And he popped in and that's what happened. So apparently he got 5 beans and jumped out. So good for you. But what Robert, what's the predictions for, what's your predicted positions on these? So what are your
I recommended
your
people
positions?
buy Youngkin and the Virginia Republican majority in the House of Delegates back about 3 weeks ago when your first polling was done. And that gave me confidence that it should have been a 50-50 bet on both of those.
At least. Yeah.
And they were at 25-30. Now the question is, do you cash in? Do you wait till cash in to tomorrow night? Do you wait to see? Do you write it out through the election results? My instinct, well, I've already cashed out because when I got over 50, I could get over 50% on something I bought at 25. I've doubled my money. Why hang around for the gamble? So that's what I recommended on my sports picks page where I do political predictions, betting predictions as well. sportspicks.locals.com. And it was to buy at 25-30 and then go ahead and sell. It gets over 50. I think I'm going to stick with that. I mean, I think both are properly valued right now. So I think what you have right now is you have something that looks like about 50%, 50 to 55% is where Youngkin is trading. And about 50 to 55% is where Republicans are trading to win the House of Delegates. About 5% is where the Republican candidate for governor of New Jersey is trending. I think all those are about accurate. So I might slightly lean Youngkin. What you could do if you wanted to, because I think they're counting the election day votes first again in Virginia.
Yeah,
and then they'll do the early vote.
Yeah.
So isn't that what happened on 2020? So
they were supposed to do that, Robert, and what people wound up seeing in a lot of places, North Carolina, all the places where things were screwed up, they dropped a little bit of early, and then they dropped all the election, and then there was early that trickled in. Like it was supposed to be election day and then early votes.
I would try to find out if that's the process they're going to use, because then you might get a little more value. Like if the election day vote comes in first, the Youngkin numbers may go up. Republican number, you may be able to cash out around 60, 63, something like that. I would definitely cash out at that point myself, because again, you got Fairfax County that's sitting there. Who knows what they're going to do? You got some turnout risk on the Republican side. I think Youngkin is going to take it. I think the Republicans are going to take it, but I would put it around 55 to 60. So slight value right now, betting on Youngkin, especially if you can get some value early in the election night, but not so much value that I would hold on to my bet if I had already doubled it, as many people that were following me already had. So I've had the same recommended bet for 3 months on Biden, which is find the lowest levels of approval that are at 30% or less trading wise and make that bet. And almost every Friday it's hit. The only time it didn't hit was when Predict-It played games and reported Real Clear Politics average before they actually had all their Friday polls in. Had they had all the Friday polls in, people would have cashed in at a 4-to-1, 5-to-1 rate. But Predict-It does that kind of nonsense now and then. So so you have to double check that. If you're internationally or some other people, you can bet with other books and have a lot more options and alternatives. Now, I think the margin for New Jersey is 8 points or so. There might be some value on Youngkin more than 3. I think that's trading at around 3-to-1. If it's still trading in that territory, Youngkin winning by more than 3 at 3-to-1, I would take that. I would take that all the way up to 2-to-1. Wouldn't take it more than that, but there you're getting some good value, because as Rich is identifying, it very well may go that way. It may go blowout direction. The Fox polls is picking up what Richard's polls are picking up, which is a late surge that's all moving in the same direction, which is Youngkin's direction. So I think
that sleeper,
the
AG,
so there,
the AG, Robert.
The margin of victory votes were great bets for me in 2020. It's how I still made money despite what they did in the election. In fortifying it in key states, I still won a bunch of margin of victory votes all over the place. There's a couple of counties you can vote on that I think are good bets for Youngkin. So I'm going to take a little bit further look at it and put it up on sportspicks.locals.com. My final analysis of the best bets for tomorrow, sometime later this evening.
And Surrey County, guys, I mean, I don't want to give you any specific numbers. I don't know if they have a county bet out there, but that is one of the counties we'll be looking at early in the night to see what's going on. A very good example of once upon a time, ancestral home base. Are we gonna considerably Republican?
We're gonna go live tomorrow once the elections.
I was gonna talk to you about that. See what you want to do. Absolutely. Yeah. And I had some people like, "Hey, you gonna come on?" And it's like, I will, but I'm not gonna sacrifice my own thing. So if you want to pop in and be a part of the show for 10 or 15 minutes, if you can hook up a camera like that, by all means. But I plan on spending that night with the usual crowd, you locals, all that, right? So I have some already stuff written up, and Surrey's one of them. We have on margins in Loudoun, of course, Richmond, especially south of Richmond. There's a lot we're going to be looking at, and it really does come down to, and Surrey's going to tell us, Robert, did Youngkin not only hold on to, but even potentially expand in some of these areas where, they're not necessarily just our polling, but other polling, even USA Today, conducted by Suffolk University, the Washington Post poll, they show the potential for Youngkin to put up even bigger numbers than Trump in some of these areas that were moving, which would suggest, what does that mean in the long term for Virginia, which the locals page knows. That puppy should have been D+6 to D+8 in the voter file inference models by now, Robert. It's not, man. It was D+4, and then by July of this year, it went even. And then now we're at R+4. So if that happens, that's why I really haven't ruled out the potential for a Fox-like scenario, because it is very possible we're all weighting this electorate too damn Democratic. Even I'm still like D, almost 2. Suffolk was
It's
D3,
hard just
Emerson's
because of,
D6.
how Democratic it was in 2017 and 2020.
Yeah, exactly. And this is an off year, so you would think it would be a little bit more history tells us it will be more Republican than either 17 or 20. But you just never know with the games these people play, man.
And
the sleeper in that is the Attorney General race. That Herring should have been winning this thing in the land. He was polling way ahead of you. If you're Herring, you're so pissed off at Terry McAuliffe.
The most useful baselines will be the 2013, 2017, and 2020. Because how far does I think McAuliffe will definitely run way behind his rule numbers in 2021 compared to 2013. I don't think he'll get anywhere near those numbers. And the question is, but I think Youngkin probably has to run 7 points or more ahead of Trump in a lot of the urban or suburban areas, because I don't think he'll run that much ahead of Trump, if at all, in the rural areas.
Yeah, I think that too. McAuliffe did. Ken Cuccinelli, supposedly a extreme right winger, anti-abortion. He did very well in some of the suburbs in DC. And if Youngkin improves on what Cuccinelli did, I think that's a wrap. I really do, because I think McAuliffe's going to bottom out in these rural areas, man. He is. Some of this is just trend, like Surrey. Some of that is just trend, but some of this is, you really can't tell parents that they don't have a right to approve the curriculum that you are giving their students. And it's like this left-right combination.
And the big thing they said was a myth, that allowing men into girls' bathrooms wouldn't cause trouble.
It wouldn't cause trouble.
True. Turned out caused trouble, and caused trouble in the worst possible way, and then they tried to cover it up on top of it. I mean, that was a bad timing for that kind of scandal that went right to the heart of the problems with wokeism.
And the prosecutor in Loudoun County turned out to be who? McAuliffe's buddy. I mean, this is just the worst possible spider web, man. It really is. And let's see. What does your coffee mug mean, Robert?
Oh, so this is a gift from the Duran. So people can follow the Duran on YouTube and on Locals, the Duran.locals.com. They sent me a bunch of cool hats, shirts, and coffee mugs. So this is their double-headed eagle with the U.S. flag inside.
I got to get merch, man. I mean, a lot of people are like, hey, where's the merch? I got to do it. I just don't know who to go with yet. And I'm not going to like box myself into the merchandise, like people.
I'll find out from the Duran, because all their stuff is top notch. They have one supplier, and it's really good.
That's cool. Yeah, I'd love to figure that out. And by the way, I did try Allison's Malbecs, and I got like 6 of them. And man, I'll tell you what, there's not a single one I don't like. And there is no joke. I bought a Malbec that's a high altitude from a winery, a local winery that, it's just a wine store, And there's, without a doubt, still, I can taste the wood in that Malbec that you just won't taste in Allison's Malbecs, which is Bonner Wines, for people who don't know what I'm talking about. They were fantastic. I really have to say, for that price, I was blown away by how quality wine that was. I really was. It's not cheap, but it's not expensive.
I'm a wine snob, and I got a bunch of them, and it's like 50% off for you can go to Allison Morrow, also her Locals page, and see the promotion. And they're top. I'm a wine snob, and they're the real deal.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't want to say that. So is Laura, by the way. She won't admit it, but she is, especially when it comes to red. She's not a big. The only thing she does like to drink that's not snobby is a Ruffino Chianti. That's like anyone who's Italian. All right. Every Sunday dinner, the label, guys. The brown label. Ruffino Chianti's been around forever, and it's just something you got used to drinking with your pasta and your antipasta. So it's not that expensive. It's like $20 a bottle. It's not exactly expensive bottle.
Yeah, they're
all right.
Really good wines you can get for less than $20 a bottle if you know what you're doing.
Sure.
But, certain rare, distinct Malbec has to be made the right way, or it's, in my view, not a great wine. And when I say wine
totally
snob,
agree.
I mean generally no American.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I was really I tried to go and compare some of what I got from her to other ones that I know but have never tried. And man, it's either done right or it's done horribly wrong. There is no in between, my friend. None.
It's like
There's
sushi and
good and
beef
then better.
tartare. It's got to be done right
Yeah.
or it's awful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good analogy. All right, so what can I show here? Generally,
Oh,
the
well,
point I was
a good
thinking
transition
of making
is, why don't we talk
Yeah.
about party inference? And because there are a lot of states that don't have party registration, and if you're doing jury selection, often party inference is an important proxy, and you often won't be allowed to ask the jurors, hey, which party are you a part of?
Right.
So you have to know their information and run it through the system. So let's do, like let's say we're doing a Loudoun County criminal case, and we were the prosecutor prosecuting that that individual who committed the assault in the bathroom, was alleged to have committed the assault in the bathroom. So one proxy would be Democrats would be much more sympathetic to the defense than Republicans. And so let's assume we were the prosecutor. Well, how would we just know their name, maybe pull up somebody random from Loudoun County as to, I don't know if we can black out their name or whatnot, but how party inference works to show how can you still infer party when there's no party registration of a person, when party inference is often an essential proxy in a lot of jury selection these days.
Yeah, that's great. So micro-targeting would be my go-to here, right? So consumer, what do you consume? And it's like, if I could show them some of the crosstabs, I'll just give them an example of what we would say, okay?
Yep.
And then I'll bring up Aristotle and we'll go from there. But basically, we would say something like, please tell us whether you agree or disagree with the following statement, okay? And it would be something that's fairly partisan, but you wouldn't know it. It's not overtly partisan. Do you believe in the right to self-defense? There's something like that. Or what kind of news do you consume and how often do you consume it? All right. And this is a great example. YouTube channels. And we would all different things, right? Corporate media, talk radio, social media, cable news networks such as Fox News Channel, CNN, and MSNBC. Which ones? Network news such as ABC, CBS, or NBC. You get the point. National newspapers such as the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal. All right, so you guys get the idea. And then how often? Every day? Several times a week? Occasionally? Never? Right? And then take a state like Virginia, like Robert just said with Loudoun County. There is no, and I can show them real quick how to do it. And I'm going to try to do this without charging myself, but here we go. All right. So we showing it right now. Yeah. So here we are in the voter file. And I chose, you can see, we're going to exclude dead people. We're going to exclude change of address flags. Although I'm going to have to stop doing that soon, Robert. That's going to have to stop being the industry standard because you never know, right? Well, with jury selection, they're not going to show up for jury selection, but when it comes to voting and polling, it's different.
Yeah,
and then I went to jurisdiction.
You can't mail in a jury verdict.
You can't mail. And I went to jurisdiction here. It's real simple, jurisdiction, click it again, just show people. Go to county, and I chose Loudoun County, as you can see here, right? Going to cancel it out, but it's already in the... There is no party registration in the state of Virginia, all right? So when I run this, I'm going to just show them it comes up with something, then I'm going to show them how it's doing it, all right?
Yep.
So it's going. Give it a minute. There it is. All right. So in Loudoun County now, holy crap. Well, that's different. Just from a month ago. See, something's happening here, Robert. Why do I know something? Because people are changing behaviors, folks. And that behavior is indicating to us that they would lean one way or another. All right. Or it's inferring. All right. Now, that's an unusually high number of unknowns. But it is possible. What we're seeing is a lot of people who have Democratic-like behavior now just being, what's the word, Robert? Not identifiable as Republican, but they're moving away. So maybe they watched Rachel Maddow a hell of a lot 6 months ago. But now they don't watch her anymore, right? Something like that, okay?
They're not subscribing to the same places. They're not making donations to the same. It's the shift.
That's right.
That where you get the inference from is all the other data points that are available about somebody. So it's the data points about if they've ever made a donation, if they show up on certain organized lists, if certain Facebook lists, certain Twitter lists, certain social media lists, certain newspaper subscriptions, magazine subscriptions, TV viewership, all of this data at different level is gathered. There's some data that's more available than others for different people, but for a lot of people, for about 2/3 of the population, you can make a pretty good guess as to which party they lean to, as to where their political preferences and ideological inclinations are, based on all the data that's being collectively aggregated about all of us on a day-to-day basis, especially over the last 20 years. And
Which
that
is
allows
scary.
you, in a hypothetical jury selection, all you need to know is the person's name, and you can look it up and see whether they're inferred Democrat, inferred Republican, or unknown, based on available data, even without voter registration records, even without the opportunity to ask them questions, just based on their name. That available information is available in the file. I wonder can you look up a voter by name?
Yeah, I would have to. It has to get pulled though. So like, I mean, it can be done, but we normally drill down because it's not. You know what? It's not worth it. So what we'll do is, in Loudoun County, there is 247,713 unique individuals. We could get more if we wanted, different things.
Oh, right.
But
what I mean is, if we were doing a live jury selection.
I do that when
Robert
we do.
Barnes, Clark County.
Yeah, I do that with that. But like, it would, if you tell me, for instance, that we're in this district, this federal district, I'll actually not even go by a county or something. It'll be a district, and I'll pull that entire district just because, it costs less sometimes in the long run. It depends how big our potential pool is. But if you come to me and you say, look, I got 50 names, then that's it. We got to pull them by single person.
Let's
that would cost me if I do it.
Let's
though.
Look at what Kenosha County looks like.
Okay, all right, and just let me just show people real quick. Loudoun was 223,000 votes, 62 almost for Joe Biden, 37 for Donald Trump. Let me just watch this, just to show people how. Watch this, just to show people how accurate it really can be. All right, likely Biden voter, blah blah blah, which comes to, let's get a number from 2020. 138,000. Okay. I mean, I'm pretty sure it will come up. Look, I mean, 122,000, almost 23,000 landlines. Out of all of it, Biden voters will be down here. Yeah, likely Biden voters. So already profiled 50. If you enter more information in, so like for instance, over here, this is how we get what you were talking about with those attributes. Where are we? I'm missing it somehow. Where's the modeling? Oh, I'm in geography. That's why. We would go to micro-targeting, and we would look at different stuff like who do they contribute to? Do they have a business owner? Income and network, profiled voters, magazine purchases, and then more can be added here. Home ownerships, children by household. I mean, it really is.
Yeah. Things like, are they pickup truck people or electric car people?
That's exactly right. Yeah, utility bills, right? Things like So we would know also too how environmental they are, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're liberal. But look, if they have certain flags going off in those categories, but then there's a donor contribution,
right?
Yeah.
And are they supplement purchasers? What kind of supplement purchasers are they? All the things you purchase, everything you do every day discloses a little piece of intel that you put it together and you use an AI modeling system. There was a certain lawyer in Kenosha who didn't know what the word AI meant, but that's another story. But then you can use just the information. Just once you know the name of the juror, you can get a really decent profile on them 2/3 of the time. That if you've already polled, you can measure that against your polling proxies and figure out whether they're a bad juror or potentially good juror.
Yeah, and when we pull them, they come off in a CSV file, which you can easily turn into a readable spreadsheet. Every column is ordered by alphabet. There are so many attributes that they double up on the alphabet. So it goes to, more than double up. It goes to A to Z, and then AA, AB, AC, and it'll keep going and going. And then there's keys. So something maybe E represents a bachelor degree. So your system, eventually it's a pain in the butt, but you can build the API and then it's actually really easy to read like it is here. So it comes back and it feeds back as a human readable, result for a query. So if you were to look in the database, these are all given codes and those, names. That's why in MarketSite, you see where it'll say, give me the name, what's the description, what's the code, because that is how could I put this? If people don't know what an API is, you got to be able to talk to the database. So those codes have to match, or the names have to match, whatever the columns and the row values are. And then they come back and they will give you a readable. If it matches with K in one column, it knows K means married, right? And then it'll feed back, this person is married. So, and then they all have API IDs, which is the respondent ID in MarketSite. So if we're looking for somebody right now in Wisconsin and Kenosha, and we were just profiling generally, we would know where to look. So, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but I'm trying to make it as easy as possible. But looking at, what do you want to do in Kenosha? Just general first?
Yeah.
Take a look at what Kenosha looks like, which is once upon a time, Paul Ryan's country. Basically.
Its long history is settled initially by Yankee, English, and French. Then from the 1880 to 1920, massive German migration, followed by Italian, Polish, and East European migration. Then it became a New Deal labor town. While its economic and political structure were controlled by old Yankee money, its voting power shifted to the ethnic minorities, predominantly Catholic, though some German Lutherans mixed in. And the net effect of it was that it was a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 FDR town that stayed labor Democratic through the 80s and 90s, and even voted for Obama by double digits in 2012. Then flipped to Trump in 2016, voted for Trump by 1, voted for Trump by more than that in 2020 by 3. Because there was a lot of people in Kenosha who didn't like the riots, who saw the riots as outside agitators coming in, causing trouble, using it as a pretext to commit sociopathological criminal behavior. But it's an old school labor Democratic town by nature that only voted for Trump Republican wise. So what does it say in Third Democrat and Third Republican?
Yeah, Democrats, and this is something we've talked about in Wisconsin for a while now. So Democrats have a base by having their core supporters and then a big chunk of this unknown, right? And if you look statewide, it looks like Wisconsin's about R4, R5. It actually probably is more than that now. I haven't remember the last time we looked at it. It might have been more. My diehard locals community probably would know. It may be something ridiculous like RE, but that's because there's a lot of inference that is unknown in Democrats, which tells you activism is low in this area. It would be the easiest things to find and know whether you're a Democrat is a contribution to a candidate. And the FEC record is you're going to find the FEC record, and it's going to infer that you're a Democrat based on fact you made a contribution to a Democratic candidate. In Wisconsin, in some of these red counties that Trump flipped, the inference for Democrats is abysmal. All right. Yet statewide, they're in the 30s, but inference in this is only like 15%.
Yep.
Inferred Republican.
You have they organized by labor unions and by a lot of Catholic church activities, Catholic groups. The old school Catholic member associations dominate Kenosha, so they don't show up. The Democratic vote group doesn't show up in a traditional inferred. It's why you really need top-notch data experts to review names. You need to review for multiple days because you have no voter registration data. You have and in a county like Kenosha, you have very limited inferential data, at least as to Democrats. You can guess who's a Republican, exclude them from the equation if that's your analysis. But a lot of your unknowns, you really need to know, that almost half of the county is an unknown. You need to really do deep dives into their profiles to figure out what other proxy information might be available. And if you know who they are in advance, you can target your questions to them, and you can have a body language people there watching and observing them to see if they're being honest and truthful to give you great feedback. It's how you really need, in a case like Kyle Rittenhouse's case, you really needed a combined jury selection effort of a massive deep dive into the data, combined with in-person follow-up interviews, knowing who you're going to target, because you can't look
Yeah,
at all
you do.
34 people that are sitting in the jury selection area at the same time. And if you know, okay, these 8 are unknowns in the demographic data that we did a deep dive, still couldn't figure out what their inclinations were. We're going to ask specific questions that have been revealed in the polling to be informative, and use the body language people to make sure they're being honest. Or if they're being dishonest, no, that's a red flag. So that's how you can combine this kind of data analysis with and use the data analysis not just to pick people, but to identify risks and identify people you don't know. And then you use your in-person jury selection to fill in the gaps that you were only able to identify by doing the data analysis in the first place.
Yeah, and in this too really does go to, just for a reference, about 88,467 votes were cast in 2020 in Kenosha. And look at how many unique individuals, folks, are in this system still. So when they tell you that this isn't filled with crap junk, it is, and it blows up. That's another reason why you got to go more. You'll have to get more individual to these records, and it's so little. We just, if we didn't have a boiled down list and we were flying blind, Robert, it would be worth pulling this whole thing early in the beginning. But since that, I don't want to get into it, but it was easier to drill down name by name in that case, But this is blowing up the unknowns because there's no activity on these records anymore. They probably should have been removed 8 years ago. All right. But they're still there because we're told that everything is just fine and there's nothing wrong. But of course, there's, probably, I don't even want to speculate, but this already is excluding the deceased. This already is excluding change of address flags. So we're talking about duplicates, maidens, people who are no longer even change of address flags. They're long gone, so, and that will happen after a while and they're left on there. And a lot of times, like I've said, change of address flags, if you see there's a couple thousand, believe me, there's more, because people don't always do that. I think it was Joy Reid who misstated what a change of Joy, you actually have to put it in to be considered that. And so there's always more. Always, just like there's always more dead people, because nobody is alerting, the Secretary of State or the Secretary or the supervisor for that county or county clerk. Nobody is telling them, calling up and saying this person's gone. So you'd have to get more granular if you're looking at a place like this. But in the end, when you profile the voting behavior, it still works. It'll give you a percentage on which way it's going to be. Is it going to be 50% for Donald Trump, 47% for Joe Biden, and that's basically what it was. In a nutshell, very, very close.
Do you have any data in this database on like Second Amendment beliefs or gun ownership or anything like that?
Oh yeah. So let's go Second Amendment. You want to just stand in? Yep. You just want to sit in this county, right?
Yep.
Yeah, profiled, and I really have to make sure that these names change. Over years, you name things, certain things, underscores you shouldn't put. I need to clean it up a little bit. But what are you gonna do? It just takes so much time, But all right, so out of all of the people who are Second Amendment supporters, let's go down and take a look. Already about a quarter in Kenosha, just under a quarter, or let's be fair, 22.4% are Second Amendment supporters, about a little under 34,000 people. Another 77.6 are unknown. It means there could be other Second Amendment supporters in there. We would want to ferret out those people, so we're going to ask questions to Second Amendment people. They're going to give us their answers. We're going to generalize what they say and then apply it to people we don't know. So it gives you can't, like Robert said, you can't ask them all the time their political beliefs. So you have to ask people are a Second Amendment supporter.
And can you explain how does it come up with this 33,000 Second Amendment supporters? What are the data points that are available about individuals that lead that to the capacity of the model to predict that?
So they could have been NRA members. They could subscribe to Field and Stream. If they're not an NRA member, but they used to be, and they subscribe to Field and Stream, then they're still obviously into guns, right? And of course, if they've made contributions to PACs that are pro Second Amendment. So there's like 25 Yeah, which I didn't even know there were, but there are a lot of groups. There's like 25 different groups that it looks to when it looks for association on Second Amendment, which is crazy. I've only heard of 3. But then again, I guess I'm only thinking of national. There are different groups all over this area in the Midwest, which is Michigan too. There was a lot of groups in Michigan. I have never heard of them, but they're in there and people know them. Local clubs, and then again, those subscriptions, they really help. And of course, if people gun permits. I mean, obviously, you think anything's safe. It's not. If you had a background check and you were looking for a gun permit from your state, you applied for a course. Most states require courses unless your DD 214 says you're something like a mini Rambo. A state like Florida doesn't make you take a course. You take that course. Guess what? So your fee is it's now registered. So it's scary, but that's why it's so accurate. And it's
why it's essential. I mean, that's where, like, you can look at politics or a whole range of beliefs. You can find out if you have the juror's name, where they fit on that category. And by the end of it, for 2/3 of the jurors, you'll know whether they're a likely Trump supporter or not, whether they're a likely Biden supporter or not, whether they're a Second Amendment supporter or not, whether they have a strong party inference or not. And all of that information and intel you can have their religious background, income background, and other information as well that may not be publicly available or accessible otherwise, which can be, depending on the circumstances, pertinent. And from that, you can really create a detailed profile of who's a risky juror and who's not. You can also see whether they're involved in leadership activities to know whether they might be a leader on the jury, which is a particular focal point for anybody doing jury selection. And it will, as I mentioned before, it will tell you where you got gaps and who you need to focus on in the in-person jury selection. And so that your body language people can be watching all of their reactions to see what they might be honest about, what they're withholding, whether they're behaving in a way that makes them likely a good juror or problematic juror. And that's why this kind of information is so essential to effective jury selection, and sadly is rarely utilized by lawyers all across the country.
And Robert, the news consumer stuff we've been doing a lot of research into, and I think it's George Floyd's case started to make me think a lot about this. It's one of the more valuable pieces of information, but when the judge made the ruling on the Rittenhouse case, what was that, last week or something? I started to make these tweets, sending out these tweets because we know this from the research we've done. These people are the least informed people, but they think they know everything. So think about what that means for a jury, folks. If you have somebody who thinks they're educated, which, by the way, we also have that, education levels. But if they're educated and they are a reader of the New York Times and also watch MSNBC all the time, they have a strong predisposition to somebody or something right off the bat. And then they want it, instead of trying to take in, they're not people who want to weigh facts. They want to influence. And those, if you can spot one and you can profile one, then it can help you look at an unknown. And just from, maybe they share similar interests, whatever it may be. They have a similar education level and they watch the same news channel. Oh, that tells you everything you need to know, basically. I mean, it's party is great and everything. It is, and some of the racial demographics, but it's really all about those behaviors, Robert. I mean, I think those behaviors are dictating our politics now. So that's why I think those behaviors are more worth looking at. Behaviors and experiences are more worth those, the belief systems. What makes you you? I think that's what really is worth looking at over political. That comes secondary. It's almost like second tier information, because the other stuff is what is making you you. So made you a Republican, made you a Democrat or a liberal or a conservative, a populist or progressive. So yeah, I tried pointing that out the other day on Twitter, and ironically, everybody makes your point for you because everybody wants to object. They don't have any information they're objecting to, right? They don't have anything to back up the claims they're making. I am trying to tell them what we've observed now for years, which is that there are certain groups of people who have a closed mind but think they know everything, and oh, by the way, they happen to be the least informed, and they all have something very similar in common than the rest. They're very easy to spot. Now, I'm not trying to pick on anybody here. I'm just saying, and it's not it's not always true the other way around. So look at the George Floyd case. There were people on the right who were willing to look at that video objectively and say, you know what, does this look right to me? I don't know if I like this or not, right? Some of it was just fear, like the Sean Hannitys of the world. They cave because of fear. They're afraid and they want to sound politically correct. But others were genuine. And you just don't get that level of, what's the word? You don't get that level of deliberation over certain cases from the other side. You know, like somebody like this kid, he's fried, and that's it. I know it. I saw 10 seconds on Twitter, and I know everything, and no one's going to convince me otherwise.
Exactly. I mean, and the now, does this database also have like what media people subscribe to and things like that available to it as well? Or no?
Yeah, if they have cable packages, stuff like that. Yep, absolutely.
Exactly.
And
if they're Newsweek or New York Times subscribers, things like that.
Yeah, and it's New Yorker. There's a slew of other ones too. But that there's also here. Watch, I'll show you this. This is great and everything, but this is made to be overlapped with this, and I'll show you. Hold on, let me go back. All right, so boom. There's probably 4 or 5 different. I don't know if movers are. I don't know if the database for movers is interchanged with the rest. But now this just changed. You see, it said Query Builder voters. Now it says Query Builder consumers. And that is really, you'll get a lot more out of that. But they're made to overlap, which is why they all have that same API ID. This way, you know, when you're micro-targeting, is this, who is this? Like magazine purchases, things like that. All sorts of life stages. I know it's crazy, but it's true. And you can go between, I probably shouldn't have shown that, but you can go between voters, state contributors, which is that's contribution data, which is why it always looks like one of those we see every election time, right? Who's winning the contribution wars? And then that's the consumer file, and they're overlapped. I think they are 4 different databases. I think that movers is included in voters. I'd have to go back and check, but I think that and basically they're all designed to overlap with each other. But so one may be better than the other for certain things.
And ideally, you
obviously,
have, from a jury selection perspective, you're able to access all of them.
You have to. You really have to. Honestly, you have to, and you have to get that API ID associated with the name, and just and log them up. That's why I'm always busting chops to put it in a spreadsheet on Google Spreadsheet. That's why it's just easier for me. Because when I pull it, it comes out in a CSV form, and then I can just delete the columns I don't want, or some that have empty records, and we can narrow it down like that. It's just easier, and we can all share it. So if something is empty on my end, but another member of the team knows that, right? And they can take that, so whatever it may be, social medias, how many accounts do they have? Do they have a Facebook account, a Twitter account? Maybe it's empty in the consumer file, but if I take this, slap it up into a spreadsheet, somebody else who handles that can go in and add it right in, and then eventually it would be essentially we can collaborate and put it all together.
Exactly.
We keep that API ID,
and if you have,
I can feed it back.
150 names in 5 days to do it. Then you're really going to have some great data to go into the in-person voir dire with, and that's what could and was made available for Kyle Rittenhouse, but his lawyer Mark Richards turned it all down, refused to allow any of it, which I've never seen before. Refused to allow any of the data research that he'd promised 2 weeks before that it was a go. I got everybody committed. Everybody was locked in. Everybody set time aside. I still got a beautiful trial house up there in Kenosha that's empty because I'd rented it for the whole thing. Out of pocket, 6 figures in time and cost. We did polling on this to know exactly what the score was going in. They have all of our available data. We'll see if they use it in the questions. That's why we're not going into what that data showed. I'm hoping they still use it, but
pop it up. Yeah,
I'm not optimistic. I know they didn't use. We had all of these databases plus 2 other data vendors that were going to assist as well. So we were going to have then all the body language, some of the best body language experts in the world, along with several jury selection professionals. and an entire advisory council of great lawyers. So lawyers who have many acquittals in self-defense precisely, people who have great street criminal defense records, people who have Wisconsin-specific experience, people who have high-profile criminal defense experience, had agreed at basically my request to help out and assist Kyle Rittenhouse, and his local lawyer, Mark Richards, refused to allow any of it, refused to even allow us in the courtroom. So at the last minute, after promising yes for, as my understanding, I thought it was yes for 6 months, confirmed it several weeks ago, and at the very last minute pulled the rug out. So Kyle's not getting the benefit of any of this, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you know what? The body language I can't tell you what an asset that is, because on some of these questions, when we ask about predisposition, right, towards somebody, especially a high-profile case, the jury pool could be tainted like crazy. And you think you may know from the answers what kind of person you're looking for, right? Maybe someone who has had firearms training, right, and but watches another channel or something. There's so many overlapping pieces of data that, of course, you can have a situation where it is 55% likely that that person is in the same group that you need, but it's also 45% likely that he's not. So the answer to certain questions is key, or he or she, by the way. If a behavioral expert is there to tell you whether or not he is answering that question truthfully, Robert, my job gets a lot easier.
You're constitutionally entitled to ask questions about pretrial publicity. That's a Supreme Court ruling. I used it very successfully in the Snipes case, and with a judge who didn't want to give any voir dire. And the two things with this judge is very fair, sees the case exactly for what it is. Yeah. I raised with Mark Richards that this judge should know that based on our polling, up to 2/3 of the likely jury pool in Kenosha presumes Kyle guilty. The reason why the judge didn't have a written questionnaire, in my view, and the reason why he didn't allow more expansive or extensive voir dire is because he doesn't know that. I think he thinks the jury pool doesn't know that, because it's so that this is a judge that's been on the bench almost half a century. And for those of us that have been through this, up until about 5 years ago, even in big cases, there was often very little knowledge by the ordinary person about a case. You'd have about less than a fifth of the jury pool would have seen key evidence in the case, outside of very rare cases. Because of social media, that has totally changed. Now, 80 to 90% of potential jurors, if it has any degree of profile, have seen key evidence in the case. Often seen it through a very biased perspective, depending on their media source. And consequently, where there's a massive media bias, like there was in Rittenhouse's case, and total mishandling by his early legal defense team, of which Mark Richards was part, in terms of linking Kyle to the militia, he has no ties to the militia at all. Linking Kyle to the Proud Boys, he didn't know who they were from a hole in the ground. That was all the work of his team at the time, several of whom are critically still in control today. And they made critical errors that damaged him, and the prosecutor just used all the court proceedings not to get in evidence, in my view. He pretended that's what it was, not to really deny bail. He pretended that's what it was. He knew the judge wasn't going to go along with these things. He did it to inflame the court of public opinion by smearing Kyle based on the mistakes made mostly by his existing defense team at the time. And Mark Richards has not fought back at all in the court of public opinion in a meaningful way. And so that's how, when we polled it in the summer, almost 2/3 of the likely jury pool in Kenosha presumed Kyle guilty. Now, you are legally entitled to ask about pretrial publicity, which would entitle you to ask about what are your media sources and get into those details, because how much confidence do you have in those media sources? Did you review any evidence about this case from those media sources? And you can ask a key question, which is the constitutionally critical question. Do you presume Kyle Rittenhouse innocent? Because you're legally obligated to do so. Now, what does not work is a judge doing a lecture like what he's doing today. And the reason, and again, this is because the judge doesn't know there's all this bias against Kyle. Now, he's seeing tons of jurors beg to get out of the jury by saying they're too biased on the case. And that gives you an idea for how inflamed the emotions are in Kenosha on both sides of this case. And because of the biased media coverage, most of that is anti-Kyle. And with a random jury pool, Kyle Rittenhouse will likely end up with a mistrial or a split verdict, not full acquittals. With good jury selection that said, I presume Kyle innocent, and you know it because you've seen their data profile, you know it because the body language people have confirmed it, you know it because you asked the right questions in jury selection live, then Kyle would be acquitted because the evidence overwhelmingly shows that an impartial jury acquits him because that's what the evidence shows, he's innocent. The problem is 2/3 of the likely jury pool in Kenosha presume him guilty. You're entitled to ask that jury pool, do you presume Kyle Rittenhouse innocent of the charges? And what will happen is, because you're entitled to ask that question, the jurors who don't believe that are going to leak cues if you have a sophisticated body language group of people monitoring it. And literally the best body language team in the world had gathered to work this case without even any advance cost or guarantee of any payment other than my own word to if something worked out that I would do it. But just no cost up front to Kyle. And this local lawyer, Mark Richards, turned it all down. Right now, Kyle Rittenhouse is at risk because of that situation, unfortunately.
And would you agree that this is a jury selection case?
Absolutely.
Would you agree that that's really what it is?
We've been through this now for going on 5-6 years. I mean, how many cases we've studied that whatever their bias is out of the gate, the very first questions we ask, that's what it shows up as. That what all the studies have shown. I've done hundreds of mock trials, been involved in dozens of real trials, studied 100 more trials, and looked at all of the literature on this going back 50 years. And the evidence is overwhelming that in a high-profile case where there's pre-trial publicity, over 80% of jurors will have made up their mind before they step in the jury box, and over 80% will refuse to change their mind once they're in the jury box. So you don't change a juror's mind when they'll say the right answer, and honestly, that's scary. One of my favorite jurors is a juror who says, "I admit I'm biased, and I don't know how it's going to impact me." That's a juror I'll actually take because they're consciously aware of their bias and they'll be aware of it throughout the trial. I don't like a juror who says, "Oh, yeah, I saw a lot of stuff, but I'm not biased, and any bias I do have, I can definitely put aside." That's not an honest juror. That's a juror who's not aware of their bias, the scope of it, and will let it, like we watched in the Chauvin trial. We talked about it at the time. If you don't have a good jury, you're dead. And it turned out he did not do his the jury work he needed to do, and that's why Chauvin was convicted across the board. It was because it was a bad use. He did a fantastic job in trial, and Eric Nelson has a much better record than Mark Richards does. I mean, Mark Richards talks about trying over 100 cases. He doesn't talk about winning a single one. That's who's leading the Kyle Rittenhouse defense. That's who turned down any advisory counsel. That's who turned down any jury selection assistants. A guy who's known for losing. That's who he is. Unlike Eric Nelson, who has a much better reputation, he even lost because he didn't understand that what mattered most in that case, just like the Rittenhouse case, just like most cases that are high profile these days that have any degree of substantial pretrial publicity, which social media has changed the ballgame on. That's now, if there's any pretrial publicity, assume 80% of your jurors have heard about it or seen it because they can't avoid it because it shows up on their Facebook feeds, their Twitter feeds, their Instagram feeds, their conversations at work, etc., in ways it didn't used to. If it was just in the newspaper, 80% of the people skimmed it. Now they can't ignore it, can't miss it. And Kyle's at serious risk because they don't have the jury selection team that was made freely available to them or the advisory council for trial made freely available to them. But this was absolutely a jury selection. He can put on the best defense he's ever done in his whole life, and he'll need to. And that's actually good defense because the bar for him is low, unfortunately. But it's not going to matter if he didn't pick a good jury because this is absolutely a jury case.
They let that juror through, and nobody caught that juror in the Chauvin case. This is a situation where if somebody like that gets in, it won't matter. First of all, his defense is a lot stronger than Chauvin's defense. It's not even close here.
Yes,
no doubt about that.
But on the other hand, he doesn't have the advantage of being a cop either.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But in the flip side of this here is that he can't afford Like Derek Chauvin had things about the case that were against him to begin with. It was a taller order, I would say, you know, to get
Oh, no doubt.
a favorable juror.
I mean,
but in this
Kyle's
case with
case is as clean
Rittenhouse,
a
he can
self-defense
sink
case
it.
as you get, whereas Chauvin clearly exceeded
and Robert,
certain
why isn't a
boundaries at key
self-defense? Why isn't a self-defense specialist then running point? I mean,
Exactly.
I
mean,
seriously, because some
that
of
was
the
my advice
questions.
from day one. And
Yeah,
to give an idea of the people that are willing to help, and I won't disclose their names, but they're people that have literally written the book on the law of self-defense. There are people that have won many, who have the highest success rate in self-defense in the country, and there are multiple lawyers willing to do so. And I get, you know, you don't want them to take over if you're for ego or other reasons, if you're Mark Richards, but to not even listen to their advice is insane. And yet that's what they're doing. And I think because it's other people that are really running the case, not Kyle and his family. It's a major problem. And I hope right now the likely outcome is going to be a mistrial or a split verdict, unless they do a good job or get lucky at this point in jury selection, because they decided not to use all the resources or any of the resources, frankly, that were made available to them.
Yeah, but you know from looking at the results of what we did, there are traps in the self-defense questions. So when we're trying to look and see who would be good to listen to the defense in this case, there are traps. And what do I mean by that? There are people that you would think, without a doubt, are the ones that you want. Or even you may try to think some kind of reverse psychology nonsense and say, well, then if this person, let me just use an example. Let me just throw something out. If they're a gun owner, you may suspect they would want to view him more harshly if they had firearms training and stuff like that. The margin, Robert, is that you might as well just guess if you don't have the tools at your disposal. You are guessing. Guessing. That's how much
all liberal Democrats on your jury selection team, you're going to make those kind of mistakes.
Yeah, you are. I mean, it is a guess when you're looking at how much more information you need about somebody in order to draw the conclusion that they are the right person that you are looking for is ridiculous. So for that, if you don't have that, I don't see how you could possibly do the job correctly. And you may even, like in the case of Chauvin, somebody may tell you, I never heard of it. I'll be impartial, and they fit a certain profile, so you like them for it, and you don't realize that the number of people in that area are already aware and have a predisposition is so ridiculously high. The odds of that person lying are obviously through the roof. The way it was with Mitchell.
You need the body language people in the courtroom, the people that have done this, for a living for decades, to tell you, I mean, I've worked with the body language panel in various jury selection. Basically, all of them volunteered to help in this case. They are fantastic. I mean, like in federal cases, I often get an hour to pick the jury. I don't get to ask any questions.
Yeah, they're fast.
The judge asks controlled questions. They picked up tiny little micro expressions. And I once made the mistake of not striking a juror they told me to strike, and that juror ended up being the foreperson leading the charge against my client. So I've come to I've always respected them, but lived experience made me respect them even more. They know exactly what they're doing, and to not even allow them in the courtroom to be of assistance.
It's crazy.
That's insanity.
That's nuts. It's
legal malpractice.
I was just going to say, it really comes to...
He's committed legal malpractice against the interest of his client because he might be conflicted about who he thinks the source of his payment is coming from and who controls that payment.
Yeah, I mean, it really does rise to that level. Because unfortunately, and I'm just showing people the amount of wealth, because when we're looking at, are there small little differences in where people live, how people live? So is it enough to simply ask people if they're a gun owner or a Second Amendment supporter? Is there a difference between somebody who makes $35,000 to $50,000 or somebody who makes $150,000 to $200,000? I'm just trying to show people different examples.
As an example, there's a big difference between the guy that likes to go out in the Fox Club and do pigeon shooting and the guy that loves to do deer hunting and has 4 guns for him and his wife and his kids for self-defense.
Pull, right, the clay. Pull, you don't want that guy.
If you're a liberal Democrat, you might see the pigeon person as a good one, and the blue collar Trumper is a bad person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you don't know how to, because you're out of touch with the real world. And if you add the failure to do, your own polling on it and things like that, then you can just imagine, and then don't have a big data team available to you, don't have a bunch of body. I mean, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. I think there's a lot of naivete out there on both sides. The left, because they bought into the mainstream media narrative, thinks there's no chance Kyle walks. They started to realize that when the judge was exposing all the bias that they had believed in was wrong. So you saw a lot of pushback last week in the court of public opinion by the left, mad about the judge's rulings. But on the flip side, there's a lot of people on the right that assume everybody's seen the tape. And what they say when they've seen the video is they've seen the NBC's version of it, which the media's version of it, and the local affiliates were really bad on this. Local newspapers almost as bad on this, is that they said, we don't want to show the actual incident itself because that's going to be too dramatic, too traumatic. So what they showed is other things that create a completely false impression. So there's people
leading
Uber
up,
driver believed a bunch of stuff that was patently false. Kyle didn't cross state lines with a gun, all that's false. Kyle did. I mean, the community he lives in is a bedroom suburban community of Kenosha. It is as much part of Kenosha as Alexandria is called the D.C. suburbs for a reason. Arguably even more so than Alexandria is a D.C. suburb. Where he lived, your cultural economic center is Kenosha. Where he worked is Kenosha. Where his friends were was Kenosha. All of his ties were to Kenosha. So he's a true Kenoshan, unlike some of the rioters and looters and arsonists there that night. He didn't come from Chicago like people think in Kenosha because of media bias. He didn't take a gun across state lines. That's completely false. His mom didn't drop him off to do something bad. That's completely false. He was there that day cleaning up graffiti, and people asked him, would you please help protect join this group of people helping protect the car lots, because they tried to burn down all the cars last night. And remember, arson is often not protected by commercial insurance policies. The night before, a guy had gotten the daylights kicked out of him in Kenosha. And you can see liberal YouTubers talking about how they were burning down black businesses. They were burning down Asian businesses. They were burning down Latino businesses. I mean, they were destroyed. These were sociopaths and psychopaths invading Kenosha to wage war on Kenosha. And this was one of Kenosha's own defending and protecting them and trying to do the best he can, and came with a first aid kit first and foremost, and simply had a weapon to defend himself because of what had been happening in the 2 nights prior. The police, as the judge noted, abandoned large parts of the city that night, just abandoned it, was not going to enforce the law at all. It was a lawless zone. And Kyle was one of the few people there to try to limit the scope of it. If he hadn't have been there, they were trying to put light fires in a dumpster and drive it into a gas station so it would explode, killing God knows how many people. But for him, that would have happened. The problem is that is not the story most people in Kenosha know. The story they know is the media biased version, which has this false narrative of American vigilante connected to militia, hanging out with Proud Boys at bars, who wanted to commit violence against poor little innocent protesters. All false, but it's the narrative those people believe, and it's a narrative you're not going to disabuse them of in trial, because that's not the way the human mind works in our politicized age. So that's why it was critical, essential, and fundamental to do very good jury selection. And, I mean, there's tactical decisions that go on later that would benefit from the advisory team. I've never turned down advice in my life, even when I was the most knowledgeable lawyer about that particular subject matter. I always welcome other people's feedback. I don't have to act on it, but I welcome it, because there's going to be something I don't see that somebody else does.
You don't see, of course.
I've never seen someone turn down this level. I mean, this was a dream team jury selection that was turned down by Mark Richards for Kyle Rittenhouse, that now has put Kyle Rittenhouse at risk in this trial. And too many people on the right don't know it, because they've only seen their introduction to the case was the actual video evidence, which showed how innocent Kyle was. That was not the introduction of 2/3 of the people in Kenosha. Their introduction was NBC and ABC and CBS and CNN and MSNBC, which has repeatedly and routinely lied about this kid for more than a year.
Yeah, and Robert, that is those last few seconds are so crucial. So for the media to say, wow, we're not going to show it because it's so graphic, that is the case. And for those who don't know, that unfortunately for Kyle Rittenhouse, this is why these behaviors do matter so much, because if you're not somebody who's looking on the right and drilling down and saying, you know what, where's this whole video foot? It's just sad to say that that is a very small percentage, not just of normal people, but in Kenosha itself. Kenosha does have a higher awareness to the case, or so they think at least, than the entire state, for instance. But it doesn't make the predispositions to him, whether or not he's guilty or innocent, any more favorable to him because of what the media has done in others. And I've just been over here scrolling while you were talking. I mean, the ridiculousness, you can, with somebody's name or all these behaviors, I was trying to give people some idea of how much crap is in this thing. I mean, it's ridiculous. You have your normal stuff, last known address, but then TB, Sports, Spectator, do they go to, events before, what was in their cable package I was highlighting. I mean, it's just ridiculous amount of stuff, but it was all so damn important because the tiniest little thing can set you apart. When we do this research, something comes back 75-25, you need to know how to find that 25. How do you think you do it? It's that simple. And I hate not having a camera, because you'd see my expressions. But the idea that gambling with a kid's life, and he's a kid to me. I just turned 40 for crying out loud. That is a kid.
He just turned 18 years old. He's a complete kid.
gamble
No
with the
experience in the
child's
criminal
life.
justice process. Never seen anything like this. Overwhelmed, was stuck in a jail for months because of the incompetency and ineptitude of the original legal defense team, which again, Mark Richards was early on a part of that process. And it's really unfortunate. He's at high risk when he didn't need to be at high risk. Just because lawyers are making decisions that at least I don't understand. Maybe there's some logic out there that I've missed, but I don't understand it at all.
Yeah, I don't know, Robert. I mean, there's just too much in the minutia to take a gamble like that. It's just too much. You're rolling the dice.
Again, he didn't have to act on the advice. It was just to have it available. I've just never seen anything like that. I mean, that's just mind-boggling. Why wouldn't you want some of the best people in the world to give you advice? Like, if he's got some ego thing with me, fine. I don't have to be there. I put this whole team together. They can do. They're happy to be there themselves.
Right.
Why nobody? I mean, it's just insane.
It's just crazy. You have an American Express card, gold, premium, regular? Are you... Do you care about animal welfare? Are you a charitable donor to those causes? Camping, hiking. Do you like that? Cable TV. You a business owner? Broader living, high-tech living. I mean, just it's crazy. I'll never go through. I'll be 100 and I will not have gone through all of these indicators, Robert.
Oh, exactly.
I'll be 100 years old.
Tons of these people have participated in surveys at some point in their life. So
lots of them. Yeah.
All of it's aggregated there. I mean, that's where we would have been able to. They had the juror data available more than a week before trial, and decided not to allow it to be shared with anybody that we had put together. Anybody.
Which would have been unheard of, by the way,
almost. One person helping them, and I have no confidence in that person from prior experience. So it's mind-boggling.
We never have that almost never have that kind of time. I mean, it's for people who don't understand.
We got an hour. We got an hour to try to find what we can get. Here we had more than 7 days. I mean, it was insane.
It was a dream. That's a dream. That really is a dream scenario.
It was a dream team. It would have been the best jury selection team in the history of criminal defense in America.
Ever assembled. Yep. And with the able to work the magic that they're known for without normal constraints. Because I just cannot underscore, or I cannot stress enough how much that added time really would matter. For people who don't know how this process goes, Robert and I usually conduct the research, build the profiles, and then you have a very small amount of time to try to play like Post-it with these people, right? And, figuring out this one's this one's that. But there's always something unknown, or almost always. It's an amazing opportunity when you know that you have somebody else there to kind of back you up. You know what? I really need this. This is what I got on this person. Here, now you take it, you stay in your lane with this information, bring it back. Whatever you know, can tell me about it, would greatly help me to do my job. And it's tragic. It's just tragic.
Yes.
especially since we're talking about a child here.
Yep. Hopefully, the outcome is not convictions. Hopefully that's the outcome. But frankly, I mean, prayers are the only answer at this point because the lawyer won't allow anyone to help.
Yeah, prayers. And that's people. I don't know what else to say. People do that well. Do it. I'm serious. Do it, because this would be, number one, is a young man's life, and number two, it's a gift to people who would love to see anyone who supported this kid, or anyone who has whatever the word I'm looking for here. If you're not left, then they would love to take this into and make it a political case as a win for their whole narrative, for their whole agenda, and they'll do it at the expense of a young man's life. And for it, knowing that's all that's at stake here, not to use every damn bit of resource that you have to prevent it is, man, it's a sin. I don't know what to say. It's a sin. Forget about a crime, or I think it does rise to the level of being derelict, but it's something more on a moral side of this, Robert. This is a sin.
Yes.
A sin, right? Laura was over to chime in, and she's like, it's a sin. I mean, there's got to be, I don't know. I never try to jump in the mind or heart of somebody else, but I just can't wrap my head around it, without taking in some
unless,
bad
I mean,
intention.
it's to the point where you have to wonder whether there's people associated with the defense that are deliberately sabotaging the defense.
That are doing this on purpose. That's damn right. Who in their right mind would go into this thing blind like this? And they are going in blind. Whether they want to admit it or not, like you said, it could be an ego thing, whatever. Then just take the information and run with it, But to cut off your nose to spite, or to cut off Kyle's nose to spite, then it's really not even a proper analogy. Right, to cut off the kid's nose just doesn't make... because of an ego issue, or I don't know, man. But
and
there's too many pitfalls in this data. There's too many pitfalls.
No doubt that they're jeopardizing self-defense in America. They're not only jeopardizing a kid's life, they're jeopardizing self-defense in America, and they're allowing the media potentially to run with their fake, militia violence narrative that was part of the Whitmer entrapment, that was part of the January 6th issues that Tucker Carlson's exposing tonight on a documentary on Fox Nation. If they could get a conviction here, they have a fake news narrative they get to propagate as well. So this had broad, and it's probably not a great thing that so many people connected to the defense are liberal Democrats, to be honest about it. I wouldn't have confidence in liberal Democrats in this case.
Which, by the way, what else is in here? Black Lives Matter, attachments to Black Lives Matter. I mean, there's just
tons of proxy questions that you couldn't ask in person, that once you know their names, you would have the full background and know who and what they're about. I mean, if we had done jury selection, there was no chance Kyle was getting convicted, period. There might have been a risk of a mistrial, but there was no chance of convictions, period. We knew that from all the data we had studied and observed, and knew what the evidence was, and knew the reactions people had to it. They have put Kyle needlessly at risk for whatever reason. I don't know the reason, but he's needlessly at risk right now.
Yeah, I'd like to have one, though. I really, because it really is bothering me a lot. I'd like
to bother a lot of people. I mean,
I think that the public is.
I was the only lawyer to never bill a kid. I never billed him a penny, a nickel, dime, dollar. Never billed him anything. Put in more than 6 figures of labor and time into this, and actual cost out of pocket on this, on multiple expenses. I mean, heck, there's a beautiful lake house sitting up in Kenosha right now. It's empty. All of that based on misrepresentations by Mark Richards to me about what was going to happen in the defense. And at some point you wonder, what in the world? I've never seen it. I've never heard of it. Never seen it in a criminal case before. Unprecedented, unparalleled, inexplicable. And it may be part of people who are connected to Kyle's defense. Because a lot of this reaction happened after I found out that there are issues with it. I'm no longer promoting the fundraising because I can't, because I don't know who's really running it and who's really controlling it. It appears this gentleman, David Hancock, is, and he's an untrustworthy, unreliable individual. And so I was told, promised, assured, and even shown information that led me to believe Wendy Rittenhouse was controlling it. It appears that information was based on a recent lawsuit against the fund, $1 million lawsuit against the fundraising fund that I recently received because I was the registered agent.
Right.
That leads me to have doubts. And when I ask basic questions about, hey, what's going on here? All of a sudden, everybody that's associated with me is removed from the case, and I'm removed from the case.
Big red flag. Big red flag. Something like that happens. Big red. I mean, essentially, what you really just asked to see, you just wanted, like, and I see the receipts here. Since
I just want the audited financials in the legal documents showing that what I've been told for 6 months is actually true. That Wendy Rittenhouse controls it, that she has operational control, signatory control, legal control. She's the sole member. She's the trustee or beneficiary. It appears none of those things are true according to the lawsuit. And when I asked for it, suddenly it wasn't available, and suddenly nobody that I was associated with me could be anywhere near the case, and nor anyone. It's like, okay, let's say you want to cover up something, at least bring in other people that have that skill set. Don't go with nobody, which is what happened. And it's like Mark Richards cares more about his paycheck than he does about his client.
Well, I think the people who gave to this defense are entitled to know why they do not intend to use the resources from some of the best people at their jobs, which nobody else has access to. This is it's not as if there's like another me you can go to, or another you, or another behavior panel. I mean, there are different behaviorists, but you know what I mean? But there's not people who also know each other.
I went about getting the best and managed, to the great credit to everybody who helped. They said yes. I mean, it was going to be extraordinary. And to turn that down completely and not find any replacement is, again, just baffling to me. Just baffling. And I pray that, God blesses that jury in a certain way so that they see the truth and act upon it. But there's, the kid has been needlessly put at risk by the decisions of Mark Richards and people associated with the defense that are, in my view, not acting in the best interest of the family.
Yeah, and that I don't know how much I want to get into that, but that whole situation, it just doesn't. It just seems like it's by design. And if you want to suffocate somebody or restrict somebody, then what's the best way to do it, folks? Use your imagination, And it simply doesn't it doesn't make sense outside of bad. The only way I can make it make sense in my head is some kind of bad intention. It's really the only way. There is no, or just, megalomaniac level kind of ego, that just you can't be can't share anything with anybody. I don't know. I don't think like that. So it's hard for me to dive into the mind of somebody else who does, because for me, the idea of cooperation, all of the people that were ready to do something, everyone generally knows each other. We know how we all work. It would have been well oiled, so there's no logistical issue here. Anything I rack in my head doesn't make sense, Robert. That's the bottom line.
Agreed. I agree.
All right, so we
did all we could. I wish the kid the best, and that's about all we can do at this point.
Yeah, that's about it. Well, it's almost 4:30, Robert. I guess let's tell people where to find you. We'll wrap it up. I'll give them highway to tone them out, my friend, and we'll see you tomorrow with Virginia. But go ahead.
Breaking down more of the vaccine cases and other cases as they pop up. I can't comment much on the substance of the Rittenhouse case because of my prior
tough.
representation, so I won't be commenting on it much, aside from when I can, arguing why Kyle's clearly innocent and evidence that develops that points that out. But otherwise, I'm limited. I can't give like a truly quote unquote objective conventional perspective. But obviously, we'll continue to argue for the kid in the court of public opinion. Sweet kid, sweet family. But other information for all of that, you can go to for the vaccine mandate updates and whatnot. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com.
Yeah, and folks, we'll be back tomorrow, to take a look at Virginia, which will be cool as we fade out here. I'll show you Virginia. But yeah, thanks as always, Robert, and we will see you tomorrow, my friend. All the best. And I'm still here. I'm just going to say goodbye, take us out here. I'm like not a lawyer, so I'm like struggling to figure out how I could, what I can and cannot talk about. But I got to tell you guys, there's a reason Robert's not promoting the fundraising anymore, and you should take that as a hint. So how you guys are with, you guys sign up to the locals community, Viva Barnes Law, sign up to ours, peoplespundit.locals.com. Your money is your money, and I don't want somebody to get off this program and somehow mistake anything we just said for, I think I'll go give them more money. Right? That is not what we're saying here, because until anybody knows for sure, there's just no way I'm doing that. All right, so with that in mind, tomorrow will be very exciting. All right, it will be a close election by all intents and purposes. We will be covering both New Jersey and Virginia. They both will say something about what was going to happen going into 2022. But we will tell you what we see when it comes in, what it means. And I'll just give you a little bit of a hint right now. We're going to throw out some counties that we'll be looking at, so you can look and follow along. All right, some counties, and later what stinks, congressional districts. And we'll give you a little bit of a template of how this is going to go as the night proceeds. All right, and what you can expect. All right, so because the way the votes will be reported will almost undoubtedly confuse both sides, So we'll go from there, and then we'll have fun when the results roll in. Sound like a plan? All right. As always.
Tonight, you will be on.
Oh yeah, I'll be on Quite Frankly at Political Orgy on Twitter. Check them out, or quitefrankly.tv. My buddy Frank has a great show over there. Always love going on with Frank. It's been a while, so we're gonna give a little preview about Virginia. A little talk about what the polling showed. So check it out if you can tonight. It's 7:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Quite frankly.tv. And as with that, I'll be on Steve Gruber tomorrow at 1:30. 1:05. All right.
You're so lucky I'm here.
I am so lucky you're here. God, what would I do? Perish the thought. All right. So with that, I'm going to get out of here. As always, folks, consider supporting the Public Polling Project. BigDataPoll.com/Public Polling Project. I put the link in there before. And peoplespundit.locals.com. All you who have done so, we love you for it. I saw the growth over the weekend. We had the COVID knockout, then Laura's surgery, and now we're getting back on track, and we have blown past where we were before. So I can't tell you how much we appreciate it, because we do. And I'm like Dexter with my feelings, so I can't really express them all. All right. So anyway, we just know we love them.
Oh my God.
Love you for it.
Guys. Thank you for everything.
So we'll see you tomorrow morning, folks. All the best. Stay tuned. Locals, stay focused. We'll be on that page in a hot minute. All right. All the best, folks. All the best.
The lights that shine down